Hey everyone, before we get started, make sure to like the video and leave a comment telling me where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories like this one. I'm Ava, 32 years old, and the fire at Sequoia National Forest hissed like it was speaking a word. We'd arrived at our campsite 3 days ago. Me, my husband Derek, and our 7-year-old daughter Lily. Derek had insisted on this trip for months, claiming we needed to reconnect as a family after his promotion kept him working 70-hour weeks. I'd agreed reluctantly, knowing Lily would love it, but dreading the primitive conditions. Our RV was parked in a clearing near Dorst Creek Campground, surrounded by ancient sequoias that blocked out most of the sky. The trees here were massive, their trunks wider than our RV, their branches creating a canopy so dense that even midday felt like dusk. Derek was a planner, almost obsessively so. He'd mapped out every detail, where we'd hike, what we'd cook, even what time we'd go to bed each night. It should have been comforting, but instead it felt suffocating. Lily, on the other hand, was pure joy. Running through the forest, collecting pine cones, asking endless questions about the trees and animals. She had Derek's curiosity and my stubbornness, a combination that both delighted and exhausted me. The first night passed uneventfully. We roasted marshmallows, told silly stories, and tucked Lily into her bunk. Derek and I sat outside for a while, listening to the creek and the occasional rustle of wildlife. The silence was profound, almost aggressive in its completeness. No traffic, no neighbors, no ambient city hum. Just the forest breathing around us. This was a good idea, I admitted, leaning against Derek's shoulder. "Told you," he said, kissing the top of my head. We needed this. The second day, we hiked the Trail of the Giants. Lily ran ahead, her pink jacket a bright spot against the brown and green landscape. Derek took photos obsessively, documenting every moment. I walked slowly, taking in the enormity of the trees, feeling both humbled and insignificant. These sequoias had been here for thousands of years. They'd witnessed countless human lives come and go. We were nothing but a brief flicker in their timeline. That afternoon, back at camp, Derek decided to build a fire. He'd brought our own firewood. He'd read that using local wood could spread disease to the trees, and he arranged it carefully, methodically. He struck a match, held it to the kindling, and we watched as the flames caught. But the fire didn't behave normally. It started fine, yellow and orange flames licking at the wood. But then, as it grew, the color shifted. The flames turned blue at the edges, a deep sapphire blue that seemed to glow from within. Derek frowned, leaning closer. "That's weird," he muttered. "Must be the wood. Maybe there's some chemical in it." "You bought it from a grocery store," I said. "It should be fine." The blue flames danced higher, and within them I saw something that made my breath catch. Shapes. Not random flickers, but distinct forms. A face screaming silently, then another and another. Dozens of them, their mouths open in eternal agony, their eyes hollow and desperate. "Derek," I whispered, "do you see—" "See what?" He looked at me, genuinely confused. I blinked hard, and the faces were gone. Just normal fire, though still tinged with that unnatural blue. Nothing. Never mind, but Lily saw them too. She stood at the RV door, her face pale, her small hands pressed against the screen. "Mommy, why are the people screaming?" Derek laughed, but it sounded forced. "It's just the fire, sweetie. Fires make weird shapes sometimes." "But they're scared," Lily insisted. "They want us to hear them." I went to her, pulled her into my arms. She was trembling. "It's okay, baby. It's just our imagination." But I didn't believe that, and neither did she. We let the fire burn down quickly that night. dousing it with water until the blue flames finally died. Derek insisted it was nothing, that the wood had been treated with something that caused the color change, but his voice was too loud, too insistent. He was trying to convince himself as much as us. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in our bed at the back of the RV, listening to Derek's steady breathing beside me, and I felt an overwhelming sense of being watched. The windows were covered, but I could feel eyes on us. Many eyes. I told myself it was animals. Deer, maybe, or raccoons. But I knew better. Animals didn't watch like this. This was deliberate, intelligent, hungry. Around 3 in the morning, I heard Lily whimper. I got up and went to her bunk, finding her curled into a tight ball, her eyes squeezed shut. "Bad dream," I whispered, stroking her hair. She shook her head. "They're still here, Mommy. The people from the fire. They're outside." I looked out her small window. The moon was full, casting silver light through the trees. And in that light, I saw movement. Shadows that didn't match the trees. Shapes that moved with purpose, circling our RV in a slow, methodical pattern. I closed the curtain quickly. "There's nothing out there, sweetheart. Try to go back to sleep." But there was something out there. We both knew it. The third morning dawned gray and cold. Derek was already up, making coffee and studying his hiking maps. He seemed oblivious to the tension from the night before. Or maybe he was just ignoring it. That was Derek's way. If he couldn't fix something, he pretended it didn't exist. "I thought we'd check out the Big Trees Trail today," he said cheerfully. "It's an easy loop, perfect for Lily." "Sure," I said, though my stomach was churning. I didn't want to go deeper into the forest. I wanted to pack up and leave. But I couldn't explain why without sounding crazy. We set out after breakfast. The trail was well maintained, winding through groves of massive sequoias. Tourists dotted the path, taking photos and exclaiming over the size of the trees. It should have felt safe, surrounded by other people. But instead, I felt exposed, vulnerable. Lily walked between Derek and me, holding both our hands. She'd been quiet all morning, none of her usual chatter. She kept looking up at the trees, her expression troubled. "What's wrong, baby?" I asked. "They're sad," she said softly. "The trees. They're trying to tell us something, but I can't understand." Derek laughed. "Trees can't talk, lily pad." "These ones do," she insisted. "They're really old. They remember things." A chill ran down my spine. I wanted to dismiss her words as childish imagination, but something in her tone stopped me. She wasn't playing. She was genuinely disturbed. We completed the loop and returned to camp in the late afternoon. Derek announced he'd build another fire for dinner. I wanted to protest, but I didn't know how to explain my reluctance. So I helped him gather the firewood, arranged the kindling, and watched as he struck the match. The flames caught immediately, and this time they were pure blue from the start. Not a hint of yellow or orange, just that deep, unnatural sapphire that made my skin crawl. And the faces were back. Clearer this time. I could see details. Mouths stretched impossibly wide, eyes that wept blood, hands reaching out from within the flames as if trying to escape. They were screaming, all of them, a chorus of silent agony. Derek saw them too. I watched his face go pale, watched his hands start to shake. "What the hell?" "Daddy, make them stop," Lily cried, covering her ears even though there was no sound. The flames grew higher, hotter, but they didn't spread to the wood around the fire ring. They stayed contained, almost purposeful in their boundaries. And within them, the faces multiplied. Dozens became hundreds, all screaming, all suffering. Derek grabbed the water jug and dumped it on the fire. But the water evaporated before it even touched the flames, turning to steam in midair. The blue fire burned on, unaffected. "Get in the RV," Derek ordered, his voice tight with panic. Now! We ran. Derek slammed the door behind us, locked it through the window. As if that would make a difference. We watched the fire continue to burn, those horrible faces writhing within it. We're leaving, I said. Right now. We're getting out of here. Derek nodded, already moving toward the driver's seat. But when he turned the key, nothing happened. The engine didn't even try to turn over. He tried again, and again. Nothing. Battery's dead, he said, though I could hear the confusion in his voice. That doesn't make sense. It was fine this morning. I looked out the window again. The fire was spreading now, despite having no fuel to burn. Blue flames crawled across the ground toward our RV, moving like liquid, like something alive and deliberate. Lily started crying. They want us, Mommy. They want us to join them. Nobody's joining anything, Derek said firmly, but his voice cracked. He was terrified. We all were. The flames reached the RV. I braced myself for heat, for smoke, but there was nothing. The blue fire passed underneath us, around us, through us without burning. It was cold, so cold I could see my breath. My skin broke out in goosebumps. Lily's lips turned blue, and then the screaming started. Not silent anymore. Real screams coming from everywhere at once. Men, women, children, all shrieking in pure terror and agony. The sound was so loud I couldn't think, couldn't breathe. I covered my ears, but it didn't help. The screaming was inside my head. Derek was shouting something, but I couldn't hear him over the noise. Lily had her face buried in my chest, sobbing. The RV shook, rocked by some invisible force. Things fell from shelves. The lights flickered and died. Then, as suddenly as it started, everything stopped. The screaming cut off. The cold vanished. The blue flames disappeared. We sat in the sudden silence, gasping, trembling, clutching each other. What the fuck was that? Derek's voice was barely a whisper. Before I could answer, we heard footsteps outside. Slow, deliberate footsteps circling the RV. Not animal footsteps, human ones. Derek grabbed a flashlight and shone it through the window. In the beam of light, I saw them. People, but not quite right. They stood too still, their bodies at odd angles, their skin pale and waxy. They didn't blink, didn't breathe, just stared at us with empty eyes. There were at least a dozen of them, surrounding the RV completely. Men, women, even all children, dressed in clothing from different eras. I saw a woman in a Victorian dress, a man in 1970s hiking gear, a child in what looked like Native American buckskin. Derek, I breathed. What are they? I don't know. He backed away from the window, pulling Lily with him. I don't know. One of them, the woman in the Victorian dress, stepped closer to my window. She pressed her face against the glass, her breath fogging it, even though she shouldn't have breath at all. Her lips moved, forming words I couldn't hear, but I could read them. Join us. Join us. Join us. I screamed and jerked the curtain closed. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. Lily was hyperventilating, her small body shaking uncontrollably. Derek was fumbling with his phone, trying to call for help, but there was no signal. There was never any signal out here. We need to run, I said. On foot. We need to get to a ranger station. We can't leave the RV, Derek argued. It's safe in here. Is it? I gestured at the windows where those things still stood, still watching. Derek, we can't stay here. Something is very wrong with this place. He knew I was right. I could see it in his eyes. But he was paralyzed by fear, unable to make a decision. The choice was made for us. The door to the RV swung open. We'd locked it. I'd watched Derek lock it, but it opened anyway, swinging wide on its hinges, and the woman in the Victorian dress stepped inside. Up close, she was worse. Her skin had a gray pallor. Her eyes were completely white, no iris or pupil. Her dress was rotting, falling apart in places, revealing desiccated flesh beneath. She smelled like earth and decay. "Join us," she said, her voice a dry rasp. "The fire welcomes all." Derek shoved me and Lily behind him, brandishing the flashlight like a weapon. "Get out! Get the hell out!" The woman tilted her head, studying him with those terrible blank eyes. Then she smiled, revealing teeth that were too sharp, too many. "The fire has already chosen. You fed it. Now it feeds on you." More of them climbed into the RV. The man in hiking gear, a teenage boy in a Letterman jacket, a little girl no older than Lily, her dress stained with something dark. They filled the small space surrounding us, their dead eyes fixed on us with unwavering focus. "What do you want?" I screamed at them. "What do you want from us?" "The same thing you want," the Victorian woman said. "To not be alone, to share our suffering." One of them, the teenage boy, reached for Lily. Derek swung the flashlight at him, connected with his head with a sickening crunch. But the boy didn't react, didn't even flinch. He just kept reaching, his fingers closing around Lily's arm. I grabbed my daughter and pulled, but the boy was impossibly strong. Lily screamed, struggling, her eyes wild with terror. The skin where he touched her turned gray, spreading like a stain. "Let her go!" Derek threw himself at the boy, wrestling him away from Lily. They crashed into the small kitchenette, and I heard bones breaking. But I wasn't sure whose bones. I didn't wait to find out. I grabbed Lily and ran for the open door, pushing past the dead things that cluttered our RV. We burst out into the night, into the cold air and darkness, and I ran without looking back. Behind us, I heard Derek screaming, not in fear, in agony. "Daddy!" Lily sobbed, trying to turn back, but I held her tight and kept running. The forest was alive with movement. More of them, emerging from between the trees, their pale forms glowing faintly in the moonlight. They didn't run, didn't need to. They just walked with that same deliberate pace, converging on us from all directions. I ran blindly, crashing through underbrush, my lungs burning. Lily was dead weight in my arms, crying for her father. I wanted to go back for him. God, I wanted to. But I knew that he was already gone. I'd heard his death in that scream. A root caught my foot and I went down hard. Lily tumbling from my arms. We hit the ground in a tangle of limbs, and I felt something in my ankle give way. Pain shot up my leg, white hot and blinding. Lily crawled to me, her face streaked with tears and dirt. "Mommy, get up. Please get up." I tried. I pushed myself up on my hands, put weight on my ankle, and collapsed again with a cry. It was broken, or badly sprained. Either way, I couldn't run anymore. The dead things were closer now. I could hear their footsteps, slow and steady, like a countdown. I pulled Lily close, shielding her with my body. "I'm sorry," I whispered into her hair. "I'm so sorry, baby. It's okay, Mommy," she said softly. "They're not so scary anymore." I looked down at her, confused, and my blood turned to ice. Her eyes had gone white. "Lily?" My voice cracked. "Lily, no. It doesn't hurt, Mommy," she said, and her voice had that same dry, dead quality as the Victorian woman. "The fire makes it better, makes everything quiet." She pulled away from me, and I saw the gray spreading across her skin, creeping up her neck, her face, where the teenage boy had touched her. The infection, if that's what it was, had been working inside her this whole time. "Lily, please." I reached for her, but she stepped back. "Come with us, Mommy," she said, holding out her small hand. "We'll be together. Forever." Behind her, the dead things emerged from the forest. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, all staring at me with those empty white eyes. and among them I saw Derek. He walked stiffly, his neck bent at an unnatural angle. Blood covered the front of his shirt. He was moving, walking, looking at me with those terrible blank eyes. "Ava," he said in that rasping, dead voice. "Join us." I screamed. I screamed until my throat was raw, until I couldn't make sound anymore. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. But it was. Lily took my hand. Her skin was cold, so cold it burned. "It's time, Mommy. The fire is waiting." I looked past her, toward our campsite, and I saw it. The blue flames, burning higher than before, reaching up into the night sky. And within those flames, more faces. So many faces. Thousands of them. All screaming. All suffering. All waiting for us to join them. "No," I whispered. "No, no, no." But Lily was pulling me, and I was too weak, too injured to resist. She dragged me through the forest, back toward our camp, back toward that horrible blue fire. Derek walked beside us, his broken neck lolling, his dead eyes never leaving my face. The other dead things followed, a silent procession of the damned. When we reached the fire ring, I saw something I hadn't noticed before. Bones. The ground around the fire was littered with them. Human bones, charred and broken, half buried in the soil. How many people had died here? How many had been consumed by whatever this was? The blue flames roared, hungry and eager. The faces within screamed louder, beckoning. Lily let go of my hand and walked toward the fire. She didn't hesitate, didn't pause. She stepped right into the flames and they swallowed her whole. For a moment, I saw her face among all the others, mouth open in a silent scream, eyes wide with horror. Then Derek followed her. Then the Victorian woman. Then all the others, one by one, walking calmly into the blue fire, adding their screams to the chorus. I was alone. The fire waited. I could feel its pull, like gravity, like hunger. It wanted me, needed me. The flames whispered promises. No more pain, no more fear, no more loneliness. Just the fire, eternal and pure. I crawled toward it. My broken ankle dragged behind me, useless. My hands clawed at the dirt, pulling me forward. Every rational part of my brain screamed at me to stop, to run, to fight. But I was so tired. So tired. The heat of the fire touched my face. It didn't burn. It was cold, freezing cold, and it pulled at something deep inside me. Something I reached out, let my fingers brush the blue flames, and I heard them all. Every voice in the fire. Thousands of them, spanning centuries. Hikers, campers, settlers, Native Americans who had lived here long before any white man came. All of them had been drawn to this place, to this fire, to this curse. All of them had burned and suffered and become part of it. All of them were still burning. I jerked my hand back, the spell broken. Not from strength or courage, but from pure animal terror. Some primal part of me refused to go quietly into that horror. I turned and crawled, dragged myself away from the fire. Behind me, I heard the screaming intensify, angry now. The fire didn't like being denied. I don't know how long I crawled. Hours, maybe, or minutes. Time felt broken, wrong. But eventually, I reached the main road, the paved path that led to the ranger station. My hands were bloody, my clothes torn, my ankle a useless lump of agony. But I was away from that fire, away from those dead things. A car's headlights washed over me. Brakes squealed. Doors opened. Voices asked questions I couldn't answer. Hands lifted me gently. I tried to tell them. Tried to warn them about the fire, about the dead things, about what happened to my family. But the words wouldn't come. Every time I opened my mouth, all that came out was screaming. They took me to a hospital, treated my injuries, asked me questions. I I couldn't answer any of them. I just screamed and screamed until they sedated me. When I finally woke, 2 days later, a ranger was sitting beside my bed. His face was kind but troubled. "Mrs. Harrison," he said gently, "can you tell us what happened?" I tried. God, I tried. But the memory of that blue fire, those faces, my daughter's white eyes, it was too much. The words tangled in my throat, came out garbled and nonsensical. The ranger sighed. "We found your RV. Your husband's body was inside. I'm very sorry for your loss. And Lily," I managed to whisper. "My daughter?" His expression shifted, became confused. "Mrs. Harrison, there was no daughter. Just you and your husband on the camping permit." "What? No, that's... Lily was there. She's 7. She has brown hair and... Ma'am, we searched the entire area. There was no sign of any child. Just you and your husband." I stared at him, my mind trying to process this information and failing. "No, she walked into the fire. She was there." "What fire, Mrs. Harrison?" "The blue fire. The one with the faces. It..." I stopped, seeing the look on his face. Pity. Concern. The look you give to someone who's lost their mind. "You sustained a significant head injury," he said carefully. "It's possible you're experiencing some confusion, some memory distortion. That's completely normal after trauma. But I hadn't hit my head. I knew I hadn't. And Lily was real. She had to be real. Except, had there been a Lily? I tried to remember our life before the trip, but the memories were fuzzy, indistinct. I could picture her face, hear her voice, but I couldn't remember her birthday. Couldn't remember her favorite food, her teacher's name, her friends. The details were gone, like smoke. "Mrs. Harrison." The ranger was watching me carefully. "Do you remember building a fire at your campsite?" "Yes," I said. "It burned blue, and there were faces in it." He nodded slowly. "We found evidence of a fire. But ma'am, there's something you should know. The area where you were camped, it's not typically open to visitors. There was a sign, a warning. Didn't you see it?" I shook my head. 40 years ago, there was a cult in those woods. They believed fire was a gateway to the divine. They'd perform rituals, burn offerings, sometimes themselves. The Park Service shut down that whole section, deemed it unsafe. But the signs get vandalized, torn down. People still camp there sometimes. "The dead things," I whispered. "The people who walked into the fire. Mrs. Harrison, we didn't find any other people. Just you, your husband, and your RV. Nothing else. But I knew what I'd seen. I knew what I'd experienced. Unless the fire had already claimed me. Unless I'd walked into it that night, and everything after was just my consciousness trapped in those flames, screaming silently for eternity." I looked down at my hands. They appeared normal, solid, real. But then, wouldn't they? Wouldn't the fire make everything seem real to prolong the suffering? The ranger left eventually. Doctors came and went. They talked about PTSD, about psychotic breaks, about the effects of trauma on memory and perception. They gave me pills, scheduled therapy sessions. And I nodded and agreed to everything, because what else could I do? They released me after a week. I had nowhere to go. Our house had been rented out for our year-long RV trip that had barely lasted 3 days. I stayed in a motel near the hospital, staring at the walls, trying to remember if Lily was real. Sometimes, late at night, I'd feel cold. The kind of cold that came from the blue fire. And I'd wonder if I ever really left those woods. If I'm still there, still crawling toward the flames, still about to burn. I tried to go back once, a month later, drove to Sequoia National Forest, found the road to Dorst Creek Campground. But when I reached the entrance, I couldn't make myself turn in. The fear was too overwhelming, too primal. My hands shook so badly I had to pull over. I sat there for an hour, staring at the trees, and I swear I saw smoke. Blue smoke, rising above the canopy. And within it, barely visible, a small figure with brown hair, waving at me. I drove away and haven't been back since. The doctors say I'm getting less frequent. I can sleep for almost 4 hours at a time now. I'm learning to live with the uncertainty, with not knowing what was real and what was the fire's lie. But sometimes, when I'm very still, I can hear them. Thousands of voices screaming from somewhere far away, and one of them sounds like Lily, and one of them sounds like me. The fire at Sequoia National Forest hissed like it was speaking a word, and the word was mine. I carry a lighter now. Keep it in my pocket at all times. Sometimes I take it out, flick it on, watch the small orange flame dance. Normal fire. Yellow and orange and warm. Nothing blue. No faces. But I know. Deep down, I know. It's only a matter of time before the blue fire calls me back. Before I return to those woods and finish what I started. Before I walk into those flames and add my voice to the eternal chorus of the damned. The fire at Sequoia National Forest hissed like it was speaking a word, and I'm starting to understand what it's saying. Join us, join us, join us. Maybe I will. Maybe I already have. Story 2. I'm Bella, 34. The moonlight at Caddo Lake State Park froze me in place. I should have known better than to trust Marcus with planning anything. My husband had this romantic notion that we could reconnect by escaping to the piney woods of East Texas. Just the two of us and our 28-foot Winnebago. Away from the city, he'd said, scrolling through his phone at our kitchen table in Houston. Away from your mother's calls and my boss's emails. Just us, Bella, like it used to be. Like it used to be. That phrase hung between us like smoke, heavy with the weight of what we'd lost. Our daughter, Mia, would have been 7 this year. Would have. Past tense. The cancer took her 2 years ago, and ever since, Marcus and I had been circling each other like wounded animals, too hurt to touch, too afraid to let go. So I agreed to Caddo Lake. I agreed to the RV rental. Even though I'd never driven anything larger than my Camry, I agreed to 5 days in the wilderness, where the Spanish moss draped from cypress trees like funeral shrouds, and the water was black as oil. The park ranger who checked us in, a weather-beaten woman named Carol with eyes that seemed to look through me rather than at me, had paused when Marcus mentioned we were heading to the primitive camping area on the northern edge of the lake. That's pretty isolated, she said, her accent thick as molasses. Cell service is non-existent out there. You folks experienced. Marcus had laughed, that easy charm he'd always had slipping on like a mask. We'll be fine. Just need some quiet. Carol's eyes had lingered on me then, and I'd felt something cold spider-walk down my spine. Quiet out there, all right, she'd said. Real quiet. You hear anything strange, you pack up and come back here. Don't matter what time it is. Strange how? I'd asked. But she'd already turned away, waving us through. The drive to our campsite took 40 minutes down increasingly narrow roads that barely deserved the name. Branches scraped the RV's sides like fingernails on a chalkboard, and twice Marcus had to back up to navigate turns that seemed designed for something much smaller. The trees pressed in on all sides, their trunks twisted and gnarled, roots visible above the water that crept right up to the road's edge in places. This is insane, I muttered, gripping the passenger door handle as we lurched over a pothole. It's an adventure, Marcus corrected, though his knuckles were white on the steering wheel. We reached the campsite just as the sun began its descent. The clearing was small, barely large enough for the RV, with a rusted fire ring and a picnic table that looked like it might collapse if you breathed on it too hard. The lake stretched out before us, a vast expanse of black water punctuated by cypress knees that jutted up like broken teeth. The trees here were ancient, their branches heavy with moss that swayed in a breeze I couldn't feel. The silence hit me first. Not the peaceful quiet of nature, but an absence. No birds, no insects, no rustling in the underbrush. Just the faint lap of water against the shore and our own breathing. "It's perfect," Marcus said, but his voice sounded too loud, too bright. We spent the remaining daylight setting up camp. Marcus got the generator running and the water hooked up while I arranged the interior, trying to make the cramped space feel like home. I'd brought photos, just one, of Mia at her 6th birthday party, her bald head covered in a princess crown, her smile brighter than any star. I propped it on the small dinette table, and when Marcus saw it, something in his face crumpled before he turned away. "I'm going to collect firewood," he said. I watched him disappear into the tree line, and for a moment I was alone. That's when I first felt it, the sensation of being watched. Not by Marcus, who was barely 20 feet away, but by something else, something patient. I turned in a slow circle, scanning the darkening woods, but saw nothing except trees and shadows, and that endless, suffocating moss. The feeling didn't go away when Marcus returned, arms full of deadfall. If anything, it intensified as the sun dropped below the horizon and darkness rushed in like a flood. Marcus built a fire in the ring, and we sat on the RV's steps, trying to pretend this was normal, that we were normal, that we weren't two broken people play-acting at healing. "Remember that time we went camping in Big Bend?" Marcus said, poking at the fire with a stick. "Before Mia was born?" I did remember. We'd been so young, so stupid in love, so certain that life would always be an adventure. We'd hiked during the day and made love under the stars at night, and the future had stretched before us like an open road. "That was a long time ago," I said. "Not that long," but his voice held no conviction. We ate dinner in near silence. Canned chili heated on the camping stove, bread from a grocery store in Jefferson. Everything tasted like ash in my mouth. After, Marcus suggested we take a walk along the shore, but I refused. The darkness out there felt solid, almost tangible, and the water made sounds I couldn't identify. Splashing that was too regular to be fish, too heavy to be birds. "Suit yourself," Marcus said, and I heard the hurt in his voice, but I couldn't explain the dread that had settled in my bones, the certainty that moving away from the RV's light would be a mistake. He went anyway, taking a flashlight and his jacket. I watched his light bob along the shore until it was just a pinprick, then disappeared around a bend. Alone, I climbed into the RV and locked the door, feeling foolish but unable to stop myself. I tried to read, but the words swam on the page. I tried to listen to music on my phone, but the battery was draining faster than it should have been. And besides, the silence outside felt like it was listening, like sound itself was an intrusion. When Marcus returned an hour later, I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. "See anything interesting?" I asked as he climbed inside. "Just trees and water," he said, but he didn't meet my eyes. His jacket was soaked, I noticed, even though it hadn't rained, and there was a smell clinging to him, something organic and rotten, like vegetation left too long in standing water. "You fall in?" I asked. "What?" "No." He shrugged off the jacket and hung it by the door. "Just damp out there." We went to bed early, Marcus in the overcab bunk, and me on the fold-out couch below. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the RV settle and creak around me. Outside, the silence continued, oppressive and complete. No owls hooting, no frogs croaking, nothing. Then, around midnight, I heard it. Footsteps. Not Marcus's. He was snoring softly above me. These were outside, circling the RV. Slow, deliberate steps that crunched on the dead leaves carpeting the ground. I held my breath, listening, as they made a complete circuit around us. Once, twice, 3 times. Then they stopped. I waited, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might burst from my chest. After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, I crept to the window and peered through the blinds. The moonlight painted everything in shades of silver and black. The fire had died to embers. The lake was perfectly still, reflecting the moon like a mirror, and standing at the edge of the clearing, barely visible in the shadows where the trees began, was a figure. It was too tall to be human, too thin. Its limbs were wrong, jointed in places they shouldn't be, and it was looking directly at the RV, directly at the window where I stood. I jerked back, my hand over my mouth to stifle a scream. When I looked again, it was gone. I didn't sleep that night. Morning came gray and overcast. The sun, a weak suggestion behind thick clouds. Marcus was in good spirits, humming as he made coffee on the camping stove. I wanted to tell him what I'd seen, but in the daylight it seemed absurd. A trick of shadows, my mind playing games after too little sleep. "You look terrible," he observed, handing me a mug. "Couldn't sleep. Bad dreams?" I shook my head, sipping the coffee even though it scalded my tongue. Through the window, I could see the clearing in full light. The leaves were disturbed, I noticed. A circular pattern around the RV, as though something had indeed walked around us. But that could have been the wind. Could have been. "I thought we'd take the kayaks out today," Marcus said. "Explore the lake a bit." We'd rented 2 kayaks along with the RV, strapped to a rack on the back. I'd been looking forward to it, but now the idea of being out on that black water filled me with dread. "Maybe we should just hike instead," I suggested. Marcus's face fell. "Come on, Bella. That's the whole point of coming to Caddo Lake. The water's amazing here. All these channels and islands and cypress groves. It'll be beautiful." I wanted to refuse. Every instinct I had screamed at me to refuse. But I looked at my husband's face, saw the hope there, the desperate need for this trip to mean something, and I couldn't take that from him. "Okay," I said, "but let's stay close to shore." We launched the kayaks around 9, after Marcus had checked both for leaks and made sure I had a whistle and a waterproof bag for my phone. The water was calm, almost glassy, and our paddles made soft, splashing sounds that echoed strangely in the stillness. We headed east, following the shoreline, weaving between cypress knees that rose from the water like the bones of some vast, submerged creature. "This is incredible," Marcus called back to me. He was ahead, more confident in his kayak than I was in mine. "Look at the size of these trees, Bella. Some of them must be hundreds of years old." I looked. The cypresses were massive, their trunks wider than our RV, their branches spreading overhead to block out what little sun had managed to penetrate the clouds. Spanish moss hung everywhere, creating curtains that we had to paddle through, and it felt like passing through veils into deeper and deeper chambers of some vast, flooded cathedral. We paddled for maybe an hour, Marcus pointing out interesting formations and calling out the names of birds he claimed to see, though I never spotted them. The channels grew narrower, the water darker, and I found myself gripping my paddle tighter and tighter. Then Marcus stopped, his kayak drifting. "What is it?" I called, coming up alongside him. He pointed. Ahead, maybe 30 yards, was a small island, if it could even be called that. More like a cluster of cypresses growing so close together their roots had formed a tangled mat above the waterline. and hanging from the branches, swaying gently, were dozens of something. "Are those dolls?" Marcus asked. They were. Old dolls, their plastic bodies mottled with mold and algae, their painted eyes staring blindly. They hung by their necks from fishing line, turning slowly in a breeze I still couldn't feel. There must have been 50 of them, maybe more, all different sizes, all in various states of decay. "We should go back," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "No, wait. This is fascinating. It must be some kind of art installation. Let me just—" He paddled closer, and I wanted to scream at him to stop, but my throat had closed up. As he approached the island, the dolls began to move more vigorously, though there was still no wind. They swung and spun, and I could hear them now, a faint creaking of plastic on fishing line, and beneath that, something that sounded almost like humming. Marcus reached out with his paddle to touch one, and the moment he made contact, every doll stopped moving at once. The silence that followed was absolute. Then the water beneath his kayak began to churn. "Marcus!" I screamed as something massive moved below the surface, a shadow that was darker than the black water, too large and too fast to be any fish. His kayak rocked violently and he yelped, digging in with his paddle to try to get away. But the thing followed, and I could see it now. A shape beneath the water, humanoid but huge, with limbs that moved in ways that hurt to look at. "Go!" Marcus shouted at me, and I didn't need to be told twice. I turned my kayak and paddled like my life depended on it, because I was certain it did. Behind me, I heard Marcus's kayak tip, heard the splash as he went into the water, heard his strangled cry, but I didn't look back, couldn't look back. The terror that gripped me was primal, absolute, and it drove me forward with a strength I didn't know I had. I don't remember the paddle back to our campsite. One moment I was fleeing, the next I was dragging my kayak up onto the shore, my muscles screaming, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I collapsed on the ground, shaking, and only then did I realize I was alone. Marcus wasn't behind me. I waited, staring at the channel we'd come from, willing him to appear. Minutes passed. 5, 10, 20. The sky was growing darker, though it couldn't be later than noon. The clouds had thickened, pressing down like a lid. "Marcus!" I screamed, but my voice seemed to die just a few feet from where I stood, swallowed by that oppressive silence. I had to go back. I had to find him. But when I looked at the kayak, at the black water beyond, my body refused to move. The fear was too great. It had hooks in me, rooting me to the spot. Instead, I stumbled to the RV and grabbed my phone. No service, just as Carol had warned. I tried anyway, dialing 911, watching the call fail again and again. I tried Marcus's number, failed. I tried texting, emailing, anything that might get through. Nothing. I was alone. The sky continued to darken, and I realized with growing horror that it wasn't clouds. Or not just clouds, it was fog, rolling in from the lake, thick and white, and moving against the wind. It poured over the shore like a living thing, tendrils reaching toward me, and I ran back into the RV, slamming the door behind me. Through the windows, I watched the fog engulf everything. It was so dense I couldn't see the picnic table, couldn't see the fire ring. The world had shrunk to just the RV's interior, lit by the weak overhead lights running off the battery. Then I heard Marcus's voice. "Bella, Bella, let me in. I'm freezing out here." He was at the door, knocking. Relief flooded through me, so intense I felt dizzy. I rushed to unlock it, my hands shaking, but something made me stop. "Marcus," I called through the door. "Is that you?" "Of
Who
course
else would
it's
it
me.
be?"
"Come on, Bella, open up." His voice was right. The words were right. But something was off. some quality I couldn't name, like an instrument slightly out of tune. "Where were you?" I asked, my hand on the lock but not turning it. I capsized. Had to swim back. Took forever. I got turned around in the fog. "Please, baby, I'm soaked and I'm cold. Baby." He never called me baby, not since Mia died. It had been her word, her special name for me. "What was the name of our daughter?" I asked, my voice steady despite the terror coursing through me. Silence from outside, long enough that I thought maybe he'd gone. Then, Mia. Her name was Mia. What kind of question is that? What was her favorite color? "Bella, what the hell?" "Answer the question." Another pause. "Purple." It was purple. Now, let me in. Purple was wrong. Mia had hated purple. Her favorite color had been yellow, bright as sunshine. "The color of hope," I whispered. The knocking stopped. For a moment, there was nothing, and I thought maybe it had worked. Maybe whatever was out there had left. Then the door handle began to turn. Slowly, testing. I'd locked it, but as I watched, the lock began to slide back as though someone on the other side was working it open. I grabbed a chair and wedged it under the handle, then backed away. The turning stopped. Then came a sound that turned my blood to ice. Scratching. Fingernails on metal, dragging slowly down the length of the door. "Let me in, Bella. It's cold out here. It's so cold. Don't you love me anymore? Don't you want to be together?" The voice was changing, becoming something less human, something that resonated in frequencies that made my teeth ache. "Don't you want to see Mia again? She's here, Bella. She's right here with me. She wants to see her mommy." I pressed my hands over my ears, but I could still hear it. Could still hear what sounded like a child crying. Could still hear Mia's voice, or something wearing it, calling for me. "Mommy? Mommy, I'm scared. Why won't you let me in? It's dark out here, Mommy. Please." I sank to the floor, tears streaming down my face, biting my lip so hard I tasted blood, because part of me, a desperate, broken part, wanted to open that door, wanted so badly to see my daughter again that I almost didn't care what the cost might be. The scratching continued for the voice hours. Cycled through everyone I'd ever loved. Marcus, my mother, my father, Mia, again and again. Sometimes it was all of them at once, a chorus of the dead and dying, begging to be let in. And beneath it all, that humming I'd heard at the doll island, rising and falling in rhythms that felt older than time. Then, as abruptly as it had started, it stopped. The silence that followed was somehow worse. I sat there on the floor, shaking, staring at the door, waiting for whatever came next. Outside, the fog pressed against the windows like pale hands. That's when I noticed the moonlight. It shouldn't have been visible. The fog was too thick, and besides, the sun had barely set. But there it was, a beam of silvery light cutting through the white murk, shining directly through the RV's front window. And as I watched, paralyzed, the light began to move. It swept across the floor like a searchlight, slow and deliberate. And where it touched, everything froze. The beam hit my foot, and I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't scream. My muscles locked, rigid as stone, and a cold so profound it burned spread from the point of contact up through my leg. The light continued its sweep, moving up my body, and I understood with perfect clarity that if it reached my head, if it touched my face, I would never move again. I would become another doll, another decoration hanging from the trees. The light crept up my shin, my knee, my thigh. I strained against the paralysis. Every fiber of my being focused on moving, on doing anything. But I was stone. The cold was in my hip now, spreading through my lower back, and I could feel my organs beginning to shut down. could feel my heart struggling to beat against the freeze. The photograph of Mia on the dinette table caught the edge of the moonlight, and as it did, the glass in the frame cracked. Just a small fracture, barely visible, but the sound it made was enormous in the silence, and it broke something else. Broke whatever hold the light had on me. I lunged sideways, rolling out of the beam's path, and crashed into the small kitchenette. The light swept past where I'd been, continued its arc across the RV's interior, then faded as clouds. Real clouds, I hoped, passed over the moon. I lay there gasping, feeling slowly returning to my leg. When I could move again, I crawled to the windows and pulled down all the blinds, plunging the RV into darkness. Then I huddled in the bathroom, the smallest, most enclosed space available, and waited for dawn. It came eventually. The gray light seeping around the edges of the blinds was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. I emerged from the bathroom stiff and sore, every muscle aching. Through a gap in the blinds, I could see the fog had lifted. The morning looked almost normal, just trees and water and mist, the kind you'd expect in any swamp. I knew I had to leave. Every survival instinct I had screamed at me to get in the RV and drive, to put as many miles between myself and this place as possible. But I couldn't. Not without Marcus. Not without knowing. I gathered what courage I had left and opened the door. The morning air was cool and damp, smelling of decay and stagnant water. The campsite looked undisturbed. No footprints in the soft earth around the RV. No sign that anything had been there at all. But the door, when I examined it, was covered in scratches. Deep gouges in the metal that definitely hadn't been there before. "Marcus," I called, my voice hoarse. "Marcus, if you can hear me, please." Nothing answered but silence. I walked to the shore, looking out over the water. In daylight, it looked almost peaceful. Almost. I could see the channel we'd taken yesterday, could see where it curved and disappeared into the cypress groves. Somewhere out there was my husband, dead or alive or something worse. I made a decision. Taking the remaining kayak, I launched it and began to paddle. My arms protested, exhausted from yesterday's flight, but I forced them to work. I had to know. Had to see. I found Marcus's kayak first, floating upside down in a narrow channel about a mile from our camp. There was no sign of him. I called his name until my throat was raw, listening to my voice echo off the water and die in the moss-draped trees. Then I found the island of dolls. In daylight, it looked different. Smaller. The dolls still hung from the branches, but now I could see what I'd missed in my terror yesterday. They weren't just dolls. Some were too large, their proportions all wrong. Some had real hair, brittle and gray with age, and some had features that were too detailed, too realistic, faces frozen in expressions of absolute terror. I knew I should turn back, but something drew me closer. A morbid need to understand. I paddled right up to the island, my kayak bumping against the tangled roots. And that's when I saw him. Marcus. He was standing on the island, barely visible through the hanging dolls, his back to me. He was soaking wet, his clothes plastered to his body, and he wasn't moving. Just standing there, perfectly still, facing the interior of the island. "Marcus?" I called softly. He turned, and I saw his face. It was him. It was definitely him. I knew every line, every feature, but his eyes were wrong. They were completely white. No iris, no pupil, just blank white orbs that nonetheless seemed to see me. And he was smiling. Not Marcus's smile, not the expression of the man I'd loved for 10 years, but something else wearing his face. "Hello, Bella," he said, and his voice had that same wrong quality as the thing outside the RV last night. "I've been waiting for you. We've all been waiting. The dolls began to move again, swaying in that non-existent breeze, and I realized they were humming, all of them, a chorus of broken voices, and now I could hear words in it, could hear them calling my name. Marcus took a step toward me, his movements jerky and wrong, like a puppet with half its strings cut. "Stay with us, Bella. Stay forever. It's so beautiful here, so quiet. No pain, no grief, no dead daughters to mourn." I screamed and paddled backward, my kayak rocking dangerously. Marcus lunged forward, impossibly fast, reaching for me with hands that had too many fingers, nails too long and sharp. He missed by inches, falling into the water with a splash. But he didn't sink. He stood on the surface, water up to his ankles, walking toward me as if the lake were solid ground beneath his feet. I turned and paddled with every ounce of strength I had left. Behind me, I could hear him following, could hear his feet slapping against the water, could hear his breathing getting closer and closer. The kayak seemed to move through molasses, each paddle stroke taking forever, getting me nowhere. Then I burst out of the channel and into open water, and suddenly the kayak was flying, skimming across the surface faster than I could paddle it. I looked back once and saw Marcus standing at the channel's mouth, still smiling that horrible smile, waving goodbye with his too many fingers. I made it back to camp in minutes that felt like hours. I didn't bother with the kayak, just let it drift away as I scrambled up the shore and into the RV. My hands shook so badly I could barely get the key in the ignition, but eventually the engine turned over. I threw it into reverse, not caring about the branches scraping the sides, not caring about the narrow road or the turns that had seemed so treacherous on the way in. I just drove. The fog tried to stop me. It rolled in again, thick as cotton, and I drove blind, following the road by instinct and prayer. Shapes moved in the white murk, tall, too thin figures that kept pace with the RV, their shadows flickering across my headlights. I heard them hitting the sides, heard what sounded like hands slapping against the windows, heard voices calling to me in tones of love and hate and hunger. But I didn't stop, didn't slow down. I drove like the devil himself was chasing me, because maybe he was. The fog lifted as suddenly as it had descended. One moment I was surrounded by white. The next I was on a paved road, sunlight streaming through the windshield, normal traffic passing me by. I pulled over at the first gas station I saw and sat there shaking, unable to believe I'd made it out. I went to the police, told them my husband was missing at Caddo Lake State Park. They sent searchers, but they never found him. Never found his kayak either, though I'd left it floating in the channel. The primitive camping area where we'd stayed, according to park records, it had been closed for 2 years due to unexplained incidents. The ranger who'd checked us in, Carol, didn't exist. No one by that name had worked there in over a decade. They think I killed him. I can see it in their eyes, in the way the detective phrases his questions. "Where did your husband go, Mrs. Patterson? What really happened out there? Why did you leave without him?" I don't answer. How can I explain what I saw? Who would believe me? I live in an apartment now, downtown Houston, surrounded by people and lights and noise. I keep the windows covered at night, even though I'm on the 20th floor. I don't go outside after dark, and I never, ever look at the moon, because sometimes when I'm lying awake at 3 in the morning, I hear it, that humming, that chorus of broken voices calling my name. And I know that Marcus is out there, standing on dark water, waiting for me to come back. The doctors say it's trauma, PTSD, grief-induced psychosis. They give me pills that make the world soft and distant. But the pills don't stop the dreams, don't stop me from seeing Mia in the corners of my vision. her bald head covered in that princess crown, her smile too wide, her eyes too white. Just last week, I found a doll hanging outside my apartment door. Old plastic, mottled with mold, fishing line around its neck. The building has cameras, but they showed no one placing it there. It just appeared between one frame and the next. I burned it in the sink, but I can still smell it. Still hear it humming, and last night I woke to find my windows uncovered. The blinds pulled up, though I know I'd secured them. The moon was full, and its light was shining directly onto my bed, cold and silver and patient. I rolled out of the way just in time. I'm writing this now because I need someone to know, to understand. Caddo Lake is still there, still accepting campers in its official campgrounds, but somewhere in those piney woods, somewhere in those cypress groves where the Spanish moss hangs like funeral shrouds, there's a place that shouldn't exist, an island of dolls, and something that lives beneath the black water, something that wears the faces of the people you love and uses their voices to call you home. Marcus texts me sometimes. Normal messages, asking how I am, saying he misses me, wondering why I left him. His phone was never recovered. The messages come from his number, but when I call back, I get a disconnected line. The last text came this morning. Come back to the lake, Bella. I'm waiting. We're all waiting. Don't you want to see Mia again? I deleted it, but I know there will be more, because the thing wearing Marcus's face is patient and hungry, and it knows where I live. The moonlight knows where I live. I'm running out of rooms without windows, running out of places to hide, and I'm so tired, tired of fear, tired of grief, tired of living in the shadow of what I saw and what I lost. Sometimes I think about going back, about driving to Caddo Lake and paddling out to that island and letting Marcus take my hand, about joining the chorus of dolls, swaying in the breeze that isn't there, humming in frequencies older than time. At least then I'd see Mia again. At least then it would be quiet. But I don't go. I stay in my apartment with its covered windows and locked doors, taking my pills and talking to my therapist and pretending to believe them when they say it was all in my head. I go to work and smile at my coworkers and come home to an empty apartment where the shadows sometimes move wrong and the air sometimes smells like stagnant water. I survive. But survival isn't living. It's just the space between the moonlight and the dawn, and that space gets smaller every night. I can feel it hunting me, can feel its attention like a physical weight, pressing down from somewhere outside the world I know. It's in every full moon, every still body of water, every moment of perfect silence. It's waiting for me to make a mistake, to forget to cover a window, to step into a patch of moonlight at just the wrong moment. And one night, I will. One night, I'll freeze in place like I did in the RV, and the cold will spread through me, and I'll become another decoration in that vast museum of the taken. Another voice in the humming chorus. Another thing that calls to lost travelers in tones of love and longing. Marcus is still out there. I know he is. Not the man I married, but something wearing his skin, walking on dark water, waiting with that horrible smile for me to come home. And the thing that terrifies me most, the thing that keeps me awake long past the point where exhaustion should drag me under. Part of me wants to go. Part of me wants to stop running, stop hiding, stop living in this half-life of fear and pharmaceuticals and pretending to be okay. Part of me wants to drive back to East Texas, to launch a kayak into that black water, to paddle through the cypress groves until I find that island. Part of me wants to take Marcus's too-many-fingered hand and let the moonlight have me, because at least then the waiting would be over. At least then I'd know. The moon is rising now. I can see its light seeping around the edges of my covered windows, silver and patient and hungry. It's early, not even 8 o'clock, but the moon doesn't care about time. It rises when it wants, shines where it wants, takes who it wants. I'm going to the bathroom now, the only room with no windows. I'll lock the door and sit in the tub until dawn, the way I've done for the past 3 months. I'll wrap myself in blankets and try not to listen to the scratching on the other side of the door. Try not to hear the voices calling my name. Marcus's voice, Mia's voice, my own voice, somehow, calling from outside. Let us in, Bella. It's cold out here. Why won't you let us in? I'll survive tonight, and tomorrow night, and the night after that. I'll survive until I don't, until the moon finds a crack I missed, a window I forgot, a moment when my guard drops and the light touches my skin, and then I'll go back to Caddo Lake, and the cypress groves, and the island of dolls. I'll go home to the quiet. The moon is patient, the water is patient. The thing wearing Marcus's face is patient. They can wait. They have all the time in the world. And I'm so very tired. I'm Paisley, 29. The grass at Gifford Pinchot National Forest curled into letters. That's what I told myself later when they asked me to explain. When the psychiatrist leaned forward with her pen poised and her voice soft as gauze, asking me to start from the beginning. But there is no beginning to this, not really. Some things don't start. They've always been waiting, patient as stones, for you to finally arrive. We pulled into Gifford Pinchot on a Thursday in late September. The kind of afternoon where the light comes through the trees at an angle that makes everything look like it's underwater. My girlfriend Rachel was driving, one hand on the wheel, the other holding mine across the center console of our rented RV. We'd been planning this trip for months, ever since her promotion came through and my graphic design contract finally paid out. 2 weeks in Washington State, just us and the trees and the kind of silence you can't find in Seattle. This is perfect, Rachel said as we turned onto the forest road. Look at this place, Pais. It's like something out of a fairy tale. She wasn't wrong. Gifford Pinchot stretched out around us in every direction, dense with Douglas firs and western hemlocks, the understory thick with sword ferns and Oregon grape. The road was barely more than 2 dirt tracks with grass growing between them, winding deeper into the forest with each turn. The GPS had lost signal about 20 minutes back, but Rachel had printed maps. She was always prepared like that, always thinking 3 steps ahead. We found our spot just before sunset, a small clearing near Tucklock Lake, far enough from the main campgrounds that we'd have privacy, but close enough to the water that we could hear it lapping against the shore. Rachel backed the RV into position while I got out to guide her, the forest floor soft and spongy under my hiking boots. The air smelled like pine sap and decomposing leaves, and something else, something mineral and cold that I couldn't quite place. Home, sweet home, Rachel announced, killing the engine. She stepped out and stretched, her red hair catching the last rays of sunlight. God, it's beautiful here. And so quiet. She was right about that, too. The silence was enormous, pressing in from all sides. No bird calls, no rustling of small animals in the brush, just the whisper of wind through the treetops and that steady, rhythmic lapping of water against a stone. We spent the first hour setting up camp, unfolding lawn chairs and stringing up battery-powered lights around our little clearing. Rachel got the portable grill going while I made a salad, and we ate dinner watching the stars come out. More stars than I'd ever seen in my life, scattered across the sky like someone had thrown handfuls of diamonds against black velvet. No cell service, Rachel said, checking her phone. Total digital detox. This is exactly what we needed. I agreed with her. I'd been looking forward to this for weeks. 2 weeks away from deadlines and client emails and the constant buzz of notifications. 2 weeks of just existing, of being present in my own life instead of always thinking 3 projects ahead. That first night, I slept better than I had in months. The RV bed was surprisingly comfortable, and Rachel's warmth beside me was reassuring, familiar. I dreamed of nothing, just blessed, empty darkness, and woke to morning light filtering through the curtains and the smell of coffee brewing. "Morning, sleepyhead," Rachel said, already dressed in her hiking gear. "I'm making pancakes. We've got that trail around the lake today, remember? 8 miles, easy terrain. The hike was perfect. The trail wound through old-growth forest, past massive tree trunks wrapped in moss, over wooden bridges spanning clear streams. We saw no one else the entire time. Just us and the trees and the occasional chipmunk darting across the path. Rachel took photos with her nice camera, the one she'd saved up for, capturing the way light filtered through the canopy and turned everything green gold. It was when we stopped for lunch on a rocky outcropping overlooking the lake that I first noticed something odd. Rachel was unpacking our sandwiches, and I was standing near the edge, looking out at the water, when I glanced down and saw writing in the grass, not carved or spray-painted or left with sticks. The grass itself had grown in patterns, short blades and tall ones forming clear, distinct letters. I blinked, certain I was seeing things wrong, that it was just a trick of the light or pareidolia, my brain finding patterns where none existed. But when I crouched down and really looked, there was no mistaking it. The letters spelled, "Turn back." "Rach," I called, my voice coming out higher than I intended. "Come look at this." She joined me, sandwich in hand, and followed my pointing finger. For a moment, she just stared. Then she laughed, but it sounded forced. "That's weird," she said. "Must be some kind of fungus or something? Like those fairy rings, you know? Where mushrooms grow in circles? Grass doesn't grow like that from fungus," I said. "And look at the letters. They're too perfect." Rachel shrugged, but I saw her take a photo with her phone before the lack of signal reminded us both that there was no one to send it to. Probably just some kids messing around. "Come on, let's eat. I'm starving." We finished lunch in silence, and when we packed up to continue the hike, I noticed Rachel looking over her shoulder more than usual. Neither of us mentioned the grass again, but it sat between us like a stone in still water, sending out ripples we both pretended not to see. That night, Rachel wanted to have a campfire. We'd brought a bundle of firewood from the ranger station, and she arranged it carefully in the established fire ring, adding kindling and crumpled newspaper. But when she lit the match and held it to the paper, nothing happened. The flame touched the edges of the newsprint and then just went out. Not like a gust of wind had extinguished it, but like it had simply decided to stop burning. "That's strange," Rachel muttered, striking another match. Same result, then another, and another. "Maybe the wood's damp," I suggested, though it had been dry when we loaded it into the RV. "It's not damp." Rachel's voice had an edge to it I didn't like. "The match light's fine, see? But the second it touches anything else, it just dies." She was right. The matches burned normally in her hand, but the moment the flame made contact with paper or wood, it extinguished as if dunked in water. We tried lighter fluid. We tried dry leaves. Nothing worked. The fire refused to catch, refused to exist. "Forget it," Rachel finally said, throwing the matches aside. "We don't need a fire. It's not that cold." But it was. As soon as the sun had set fully, the temperature had dropped fast, and now I could see my breath misting in front of my face. We retreated into the RV, turning on the propane heater and huddling under blankets. Rachel tried to make light of it, suggesting we tell ghost stories, but neither of us could muster much enthusiasm. The failed fire had unsettled her more than she wanted to admit. And the grass. The grass kept coming back to my mind like a splinter I couldn't work free. I woke sometime deep in the night to the sound of movement outside the RV. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, circling our vehicle. Round and round, never stopping, never speeding up or slowing down. Just that steady, patient trudge through the grass and pine needles. "Rachel," I whispered, shaking her shoulder. "Rachel, wake up. Someone's out there." She came awake instantly, her hand finding mine in the darkness. We lay there frozen, listening. The footsteps continued their circuit, and now I could hear something else. Breathing. Heavy, labored breathing. Like whatever was out there had been walking for a very long time. "Should we call for help?" Rachel whispered. "No signal, remember? The ranger station is 20 miles back down the road. Rachel, I don't think we should go out there." The footsteps stopped, right outside our door. We could hear the breathing clearly now, wet and ragged. And then a scratching sound, long, slow drags, like fingernails on metal. It moved from the door down the side of the RV, an awful scraping that set my teeth on edge and made my skin crawl. We didn't sleep the rest of that night. We lay there in the dark, clutching each other, while whatever was outside made its slow circuit 3 more times before finally, mercifully, leaving. When dawn finally came, gray and cold, we burst out of the RV like prisoners freed from a cell. "Look," Rachel said, her voice shaking. She was pointing at the ground. The grass all around our RV had grown in patterns. Words, dozens of them, written in living green. "Leave, go home, not safe, too late, she's watching, she's hungry, run." "Okay," I said, my voice surprisingly steady considering how badly my hands were shaking. "Okay, we're leaving. Right now. We'll pack up and—" "Paisley." Rachel was staring at something beyond me, her face white as paper. "Paisley, look at the RV." I turned. The scratches from last night were visible in the morning light. Long gouges in the metal siding, deep enough that I could see bare aluminum underneath. But that wasn't what made my blood turn to ice. The scratches formed letters, carved with brutal efficiency. Mine. We threw everything into the RV in a blind panic, not bothering to fold or organize, just shoving camping gear and clothes and food into whatever space we could find. Rachel was in the driver's seat, key in the ignition, when she let out a sound I'd never heard her make before. A whimper, small and afraid. "What?" I demanded. "What is it?" "The engine won't start." "What do you mean it won't start? Try again." She did. The RV made a clicking sound, then nothing. Not a sputter, not a cough, just silence. "It was fine yesterday," Rachel said, her voice climbing toward hysteria. "It was fine, Pies. It was completely fine. Pop the hood. Maybe it's just a loose battery cable or something." We got out and I lifted the hood, though I knew almost nothing about engines. What I saw made no sense. Every wire, every hose, every connection had been severed. Cut clean through, as if with scissors or a very sharp knife. The engine was intact but utterly disabled, a useless collection of metal and plastic. "We need to walk," I said. "Back to the ranger station. We need to go now." Rachel nodded, mute with fear. We each grabbed our backpacks, mine with water and some snacks, hers with the first aid kit and her camera, and started walking down the dirt road we'd driven in on. The forest felt different in daylight, somehow more oppressive. The trees leaned in overhead, blocking out most of the sky, and the undergrowth pressed close on either side. Our footsteps seemed too loud, echoing off the trunks in weird, distorted ways. And everywhere, the grass spelled out messages. "Wrong way, she sees you bleeding soon. Mine, mine, mine." "Don't look," Rachel said, her hand tight in mine. Just keep walking. Don't look at it. But how could we not look? The words were everywhere, growing more frantic, more urgent. The grass formed letters 3 feet high, impossible to ignore, and as we walked, I started to notice other things. Trees with bark that had peeled away in strips, revealing what looked like raw, red flesh underneath. Rocks that pulsed like hearts. The path itself seemed to be breathing, rising and falling with each step we took. "This isn't real," I heard myself saying. "This can't be real. We're having some kind of shared hallucination, maybe carbon monoxide poisoning or—" Paisley. Rachel had stopped walking. She was staring at something ahead on the trail. Paisley, that's us. I looked. 2 figures stood in the path about 50 yards ahead, their backs to us. One had red hair like Rachel. One had dark hair like mine. They wore the same clothes we were wearing. They stood perfectly still, not moving, not breathing. "No," I said. "No, that's not. We're right here. That can't be us." "Then who is it?" As if in answer, the figures turned around. They looked exactly like us, feature for feature, down to the mole on Rachel's left cheek and the scar on my chin from a childhood bike accident. But their eyes were wrong. Black from corner to corner, reflecting nothing. And they smiled. Both of them. Smiles too wide for human faces. Rachel screamed and pulled me off the path, crashing through the undergrowth. Branches whipped at our faces and thorns tore at our clothes. But we didn't stop. Behind us, I could hear the things that wore our faces giving chase. Their footsteps never faltering, never hurrying. They didn't need to hurry. They knew we couldn't run forever. We burst into another clearing, smaller than ours had been, and stopped short. In the center of the clearing stood a woman. She was impossibly tall, 7 feet at least, thin as a mantis and just as alien. Her skin was the gray-white of birch bark, cracked and peeling in places. Her hair hung to her waist in tangled ropes, woven through with moss and small bones. She wore what might have once been a dress, now little more than rags held together with roots and spider silk. But it was her face that froze us in place, beautiful and terrible, ageless and ancient, with eyes like holes burned in paper. The grass at her feet spelled out a single word, repeated over and over in tighter and tighter spirals. Hungry, 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 hungry. "Oh God," Rachel breathed beside me. "Oh God, oh God, oh." The woman moved toward us, not walking so much as flowing, like water or smoke. When she opened her mouth, I saw that it was full of teeth, rows and rows of them, more teeth than any mouth should hold. She spoke, and her voice was the sound of wind through dead trees, of ice cracking on a frozen lake, of things that should stay buried breaking through the earth. "Mine," she said, "my forest, my rules, my food. We'll leave," I heard myself say, the words tumbling out in a desperate rush. "We'll leave right now. We'll never come back. Please just let us go." She laughed, and the sound made the trees around us groan and sway. Too late for leaving. You read my words. You heard my call. You belong here now. You belong to me. Rachel suddenly broke away from me, pulling her camera from her bag. She raised it and snapped a photo, the flash going off like a gunshot in the dim forest. The woman recoiled, shrieking, her form flickering like a bad television signal. For just a moment, I saw what she really was underneath the woman's shape, something vast and hungry, older than the trees, with too many limbs and mouths that opened in impossible places. "Run!" Rachel screamed, grabbing my hand and yanking me back into the woods. We ran blindly, crashing through the forest with no idea where we were going. Behind us, that awful shrieking continued, joined now by other voices, the things that wore our faces, and others dozens of others, all crying out in rage and hunger. The grass beneath our feet spelled out curses and threats, the letters tripping us, tangling our ankles. I don't know how long we ran. Time felt wrong, stretching and compressing in ways that made no sense. The sun never seemed to move in the sky, stuck at the same angle, casting the same shadows. We passed the same fallen log 3 times, 4 times, the same boulder, the same twisted tree. We're going in circles, Rachel gasped, bent double and heaving for breath. She's keeping us here. She won't let us leave. The lake, I said, an idea forming through my panic. Water. If we can get to the lake, why would that help? I don't know, but every story about things like this says they can't cross running water, right? Maybe that's just stories, Pace. Do you have a better idea? She didn't. We oriented ourselves by the sound of water and started moving again, more carefully now, trying to conserve our energy. The grass continued to spell out messages, but they were different now. Close. Almost nearly there, so hungry, taste you soon. The trees had faces. I tried not to look at them directly, but I could see them in my peripheral vision. Eyes in the bark, mouths in the knots, watching us, whispering. Some of them were human faces, twisted in permanent expressions of terror or pain. Others were animal. Others were things that had never been alive in any world I understood. We reached the lake just as the sun finally began to set. The water was black and still as a mirror, reflecting nothing. At the edge, words in the grass spelled out, "Too late." "Now what?" Rachel asked. She was shaking. Whether from fear or exhaustion, I couldn't tell. Probably both. Before I could answer, I heard it. Footsteps behind us. Many footsteps. I turned and saw them emerging from the trees. Dozens of figures, all wearing familiar faces. I saw myself repeated 20 times over. I saw Rachel and my mother and my dead grandfather and my high school best friend and people I'd passed on the street and forgotten. An army of stolen faces, all with those same black, empty eyes. And behind them, towering over them all, the woman. She smiled, and this close I could see that her teeth were made of splintered wood and broken bone. "Nowhere left to run," she said. "Nowhere left to hide. This forest is mine. You are mine." Rachel's hand found mine, squeezed tight. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you too." The woman reached for us, her fingers elongating into branches, roots, things with joints that bent the wrong way. The stolen face things surged forward. Rachel pulled me toward the water, and we jumped. The cold was shocking, driving the air from my lungs. We went under and kept going down much farther than the lake should have been deep. My lungs burned. I needed to breathe. We broke the surface, gasping and choking. But we weren't in the lake anymore. We were in a parking lot. A ranger station parking lot, specifically. The building stood 50 feet away, lights on in the windows. A bored-looking ranger visible through the glass door. My car, not the RV, my actual car, sat 3 spaces over, exactly where I'd left it when we'd stopped to get our camping permit 2 days ago. 2 days ago. Rachel and I lay on the pavement, soaking wet and shaking, staring at each other. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Instead, she reached up and touched her hair. Her hair that should have been red, but was now shot through with white, great streaks of it like she'd aged 20 years in 2 days. I fumbled for my phone in my pocket, miraculously still there despite everything. It was dead, no surprise, but when I looked at my hands I saw dirt caked under my fingernails, ground in so deep it looked like it might never come out. And there, on my palm, a word written in what looked like scar tissue, raised and pink and permanent. Mine. Rachel had one too. We compared them silently. These marks we'd carry forever. Proof that what had happened was real, even though every rational part of my brain screamed that it couldn't be. The ranger saw us eventually, came rushing out asking if we needed help, if we'd had an accident. Rachel told him we'd gone swimming and lost track of time. A lie that made no sense but which he seemed to accept. He offered us blankets and coffee and the use of a phone to call someone to pick us up. We declined. We just wanted to leave. My car started on the first try. We drove away from Gifford Pinchot National Forest as fast as I dared on the winding roads, neither of us speaking. The radio wouldn't work, just static on every station. In the rearview mirror, I could see the forest receding behind us, dark and dense and patient. We'd gone almost 30 miles when Rachel finally spoke. "Our RV," she said quietly. "It's still there. Our stuff. Everything. I'm not going back for it," I said, my voice hard. "Ever. Let the rental company come get it. Or not. I don't care. The photos on my camera. Rachel, please. Just, please don't." She went quiet again. But after another mile, she said, "You saw it too, right? I'm not crazy? You saw all of it?" "I saw it. What was she?" "I don't know." And I didn't. Not a bear, not a person, not a hallucination. Something older than words. Something that had claimed that forest long before we'd thought to name it or put it on a map. Something that was still there, still hungry, still waiting for the next people foolish enough to camp in its territory. We drove through the night, only stopping for gas and bathroom breaks, desperate to put as much distance between ourselves and that place as possible. When we finally made it back to Seattle, the sun was rising, and I felt something inside me unclench slightly. Civilization, safety, things that made sense. But that night, safe in our own bed with the door locked and all the lights on, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her, that tall, impossible woman with her mouth full of teeth. I heard her voice, "You belong to me," and I knew, with a certainty that lived in my bones, that she'd meant it. The grass outside our apartment building started growing in patterns the next week, just small ones at first, easy to miss. My name in the strip of lawn by the parking lot. Rachel's spelled out in the courtyard. We had the landlord mow it all down, but it grew back overnight, the letters taller and bolder. Mine, still mine, always mine. Rachel started having seizures. The doctors couldn't explain them. Her brain scans were normal, her blood work fine. But once or twice a day, she'd go rigid and shake, and her eyes would roll back. And when she came to, she'd be crying and saying she'd been back there, back in the forest, and the woman was waiting for her. I started finding bones. In my car, in my desk at work, in my pockets. Small ones at first. Bird bones, mouse skulls, but they got bigger. Deer femurs. Something that might have been a human rib. I'd throw them away, and more would appear. The mark on my palm started to spread. Slowly, so slowly I could almost convince myself I was imagining it. The raised tissue crept up my wrist, toward my heart. We tried to research it, to find out what we'd encountered. We found stories, of course. Pacific Northwest tribes spoke of forest spirits that claimed territories and demanded offerings. European settlers had their own tales of women in the woods, hags and witches who lured travelers to their deaths. But nothing quite matched. Nothing explained how we'd escaped or why she was still reaching for us across the miles. Rachel's hair continued to whiten. The seizures got worse. She stopped going to work, then stopped leaving the apartment. She'd sit at the window for hours, staring out at nothing. And sometimes I'd catch her whispering to herself, "She's calling. She wants me to come back. She's so hungry." 3 months after our camping trip, I woke up in the middle of the night to find Rachel's side of the bed empty. I searched the apartment frantically, already knowing what I'd find. Or rather, what I wouldn't find. She'd left a note on the kitchen table. Just 2 words. I'm sorry. Her car was missing from the parking lot. I called the police. But what could I tell them? That my girlfriend had been claimed by a forest spirit and had finally answered its call. They filed a missing persons report and promised to do everything they could. I knew they wouldn't find her. Not unless they wanted to be found too. That was 2 weeks ago. The mark on my palm has reached my elbow now. The grass everywhere I go spells out the same message. Come home. Come back. Mine. I know what's going to happen. I can feel it like a rope around my chest, pulling tighter with each day. The woman in the forest is patient, but she won't wait forever. She'll keep pulling, keep calling, until I have no choice but to answer. Sometimes, late at night, I dream I'm back in that clearing. Rachel is there, but she's not Rachel anymore. She's tall and thin, and her eyes are black, and she's smiling at me with too many teeth. Behind her, the woman stands, waiting, hungry, eternal, mine, she says, and it sounds like a promise. And the grass at my feet curls into letters, writing out my fate in living green. Soon. I know I should fight it. I know I should run, leave the city, leave the state, put as much distance between myself and Gifford Pinchot as possible. But I also know it won't matter. She's in my skin now, in my blood, growing like roots toward my heart. The mark proves it. The grass proves it. The bones that keep appearing prove it. Last night, I caught myself looking up directions to Tucklock Lake. My finger hovering over the navigation button. It would be so easy. Just a few hours' drive. Just a short walk into the trees. I'm writing this down in case someone finds it, in case it helps the next person who sees grass growing in letters and thinks it's strange but ultimately harmless. It's not. Don't read the messages. Don't stay to investigate. Don't let yourself be marked. And if you go camping in the Pacific Northwest, in the deep forests where the trees grow old and thick, and the silence presses in like water, pay attention to the grass. If it starts to spell things out, if it curls into words and warnings and names, turn around. Leave immediately. Don't ask questions. Don't hesitate, because she's waiting there, in the spaces between the trees. Older than memory and hungrier than time. She claims what walks on her ground. She keeps what reads her words, and she never, ever lets go. The mark on my arm reached my shoulder this morning. I can feel it crawling toward my heart, slow and patient and inevitable. My car keys are on the table next to me. The GPS is already set. Soon I'll stop fighting. Soon I'll answer the call. Soon I'll go home to the forest, and the woman who waits there, who has been waiting since before the trees had names, who will wait long after the last human forgets what silence sounds like. She's written my name in the grass. She's written it in bone and blood, and the meat of the earth itself. Mine, the letters say. And God help me, I'm starting to believe it. Story 4. I'm Sophia, 34. The air at Devil's Backbone Wilderness, Texas, chanted my name. I heard it first on the 3rd night, when the mesquite trees bent low under a wind that shouldn't have existed. My name, whispered in a chorus of voices that sounded like children, like old women, like something trying very hard to sound human. The air itself seemed to vibrate with the syllables. So-fi-e, so-fi-e, so-fi-e. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start at the beginning, when the air was just air, and Devil's Backbone was just a name on a map. The RV had been Marcus's idea. My husband of 6 years, always the optimist, always the one pushing for adventure when I wanted to stay home with a book and a glass of wine. We need this, he'd said, standing in our kitchen in Austin with a brochure for Devil's Backbone Wilderness spread across the counter. Just you, me, and 2 weeks of nothing but stars and silence. I'd wanted to say no. Work had been crushing me. Graphic design deadlines, clients who change their minds every 5 minutes, the endless grind of freelance life. But Marcus had that look in his eyes, that puppy dog hopefulness that I could never resist. And, truthfully, the idea of disconnecting from everything did hold some appeal. Fine, I'd said. But if there's no cell service, you're dealing with any emergencies. He'd laughed and kissed my forehead. There won't be any emergencies. It's just camping, Soph. That was 3 weeks ago. Now, as I sit here in what's left of our RV, with the dawn light finally breaking through the twisted trees outside, I can still hear my name in the wind. Sophia. Sophia. Like a question. Like an accusation. Like a claim. We arrived at Devil's Backbone on a Tuesday afternoon in mid-October. The drive from Austin had taken just under 2 hours, winding through the hill country until we reached the trailhead and the designated RV camping area. It wasn't a national park, more of a state wilderness area, rugged and less developed than the tourist spots. That had been part of the appeal for Marcus. No crowds, he'd said. Just us and nature. The campground was empty when we pulled in. Not unusual for a Tuesday in October, the ranger had told us when we checked in at the small station near the entrance. A weathered man in his 60s named Dale, with skin like old leather and eyes that seemed to look through you rather than at you. You folks planning to stay the full 2 weeks? He'd asked, glancing at our reservation. That's the plan, Marcus had said, grinning. Dale had nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. Well, you picked a quiet time. Might not see another soul while you're here. Weather's supposed to hold, though we might get some wind. Always get wind out here this time of year. Sounds perfect, I'd said, though something in Dale's tone had made my stomach tighten slightly. He'd handed us a map and an information sheet. Campground rules are pretty simple. No open fires outside designated rings. Keep your food locked up. We got coyotes, sometimes mountain lions. Stay on marked trails if you're hiking. And he'd paused, his finger tapping the counter. If you hear anything strange at night, anything that don't sound right, stay in your RV. Don't go investigating. Marcus had laughed. Like what? Ghost stories? Dale hadn't laughed back. Just stay inside if things sound off. That's all. We'd driven to our spot, site number 7 at the far end of the campground loop, backed up against a dense wall of juniper and live oak. The isolation was immediate and absolute. The nearest campsite was at least 200 yards away, and beyond our little clearing, the wilderness pressed in on all sides. It's perfect, Marcus had said, already climbing out of the RV to start setting up. I'd looked at the trees, at the way they seemed to lean inward, and felt that tightness in my stomach again. But I'd pushed it down. It was just camping, just nature, just 2 weeks away from deadlines and traffic and the constant buzz of city life. Just camping. The first 2 days were exactly what Marcus had promised. We hiked the nearby trails, cooked simple meals on the RV's stove, sat outside as the sun set and watched the sky turn impossible shades of orange and purple. The stars at night were brilliant, undimmed by city lights, and the silence was so complete it almost hurt my ears. Almost. Because even then, I noticed things. Small things. The way the wind seemed to blow from different directions simultaneously, making the trees sway in conflicting patterns. The way birds would go silent all at once, as if someone had flipped a switch. The way Marcus's coffee tasted wrong both mornings, like the water itself had changed flavor overnight. It's just well water. Marcus had said when I mentioned it. Different minerals than what we're used to. But it wasn't that. The taste was almost organic, like the water had been filtered through something living, something that had left a trace of itself behind. On the third day, Marcus wanted to hike to the overlook. According to the map, it was a 5-mile trail that ended at a limestone cliff with views across the entire wilderness area. We packed water, snacks, and set out mid-morning. The trail was well marked at first, following a dry creek bed before climbing up through juniper brakes and patches of prickly pear. The October sun was warm but not oppressive, and despite my lingering unease, I found myself relaxing into the rhythm of walking, the simple pleasure of physical exertion. We were about 3 miles in when we saw the deer. It was standing directly in the middle of the trail, maybe 30 yards ahead. A doe, medium-sized, with a coat that looked almost reddish in the dappled sunlight. Nothing unusual about that. We'd seen plenty of deer in the area already, but this one wasn't moving. It was just standing there, facing us, completely still. "Look at that," Marcus whispered, reaching for his phone to take a picture. I stared at the deer, at the way it stood, at the way it wasn't looking away, wasn't showing any sign of fear or flight instinct. Its eyes were fixed on us, dark and unblinking. "Something's wrong with it," I said. "What do you mean?" It's not acting normal." Marcus lowered his phone slightly. "It's just a deer, Soph." But it wasn't just a deer. I could feel it in my bones, in some primal part of my brain that still remembered when humans were prey. This deer was wrong. We stood there for maybe 3 minutes, the deer and us, locked in some kind of silent standoff. Then Marcus took a step forward, and the deer's head tilted. Not the way an animal's head tilts. This was mechanical, wrong, like a puppet on strings. Its neck bent at an angle that made my stomach lurch. "Marcus, don't." But he took another step, and the deer's mouth opened. Wide. Wider than should have been possible, the jaw unhinging like a snake's. And from that impossible mouth came a sound that made every hair on my body stand on end. My name. Sophia. Not in the deer's voice. Deer don't have voices. A woman's voice in a human voice. And intimate, like someone whispering in your ear in the dark. Marcus stumbled backward, his face pale. "What the fuck?" The deer's mouth closed. Its head straightened, and then it simply walked off the trail and into the brush, moving with perfect natural deer movements, as if nothing had happened. We stood there, both of us breathing hard, both of us trying to process what we'd just seen. "Did that?" Marcus's voice was shaky. "Did that thing just say your name?" "Yes." That's not possible." "I know." We stood there for another minute, maybe 2. Then Marcus said, "We should go back." I didn't argue. The hike back seemed to take forever. Every sound made us jump. Every rustle in the brush, every bird call, every crack of a twig. The forest that had seemed merely isolated before now felt malevolent, watching, waiting. When we finally emerged back at the campground, the sun was starting to sink toward the horizon. The RV looked almost absurdly normal sitting there, our camping chairs still arranged around the fire ring, a dish towel hanging from the door handle. "We're leaving," I said as soon as we got inside. "Tomorrow morning. First thing." Marcus nodded, his face still pale. "Yeah, okay, yeah." But even as he said it, I saw doubt creep into his eyes. "But maybe, it was probably just some kind of animal mimicry thing. Parrots can talk, right? Maybe there's some kind of bird that wasn't a bird, Marcus. I know, but you saw what I saw. That deer opened its mouth and said my name, in a human voice." He ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I knew meant he was stressed. "I know. I know. I'm trying to make sense of it. We can make sense of it from Austin. Let's just pack up and go. But we didn't pack up, because the sun was setting, and the idea of driving those winding roads in the dark suddenly seemed worse than staying put. We convinced ourselves, or Marcus convinced me, or I let myself be convinced, that we'd be safe in the RV for one more night, that we'd leave at first light. That was our first mistake. Night fell fast in the wilderness. One moment there was twilight, purple and soft, and the next it was full dark, the kind of darkness that city people forget exists. We didn't light a fire. We stayed inside the RV with the doors locked and the curtains drawn, eating a cold dinner of sandwiches and chips, neither of us talking much. Around 9 o'clock, the wind started. It came from nowhere, going from dead calm to a sustained howl in a matter of seconds. The RV rocked on its suspension, and the trees outside thrashed and groaned. I'd heard hill country wind before, but this was different. This had a voice in it, a keening quality that made my teeth ache, and underneath the wind I heard it, my name. Sophia, Sophia, Sophia. Not just one voice now, many voices, dozens, maybe hundreds, all chanting in unison, rising and falling with the gusts. Child voices, old voices, male and female, all blending together into a chorus that came from everywhere and nowhere. Marcus heard it too. I could see it in the way his eyes widened, the way his knuckles went white, gripping the edge of the small dining table. "What the fuck is that?" he whispered. "I don't know." "Sophia, Sophia, Sophia." The chanting continued for hours. Not constantly. It would rise with the wind, fade when the wind dropped, then come back stronger. Always my name. Never Marcus's. Just mine, over and over, like a prayer or a summoning. We huddled together on the small couch at the back of the RV, neither of us sleeping, both of us staring at the curtained windows and waiting for something to happen. For something to scratch at the door, to try to get in, but nothing did. The wind chanted my name, the RV rocked, and we waited in terror until finally, around 3 in the morning, the wind died as suddenly as it had started. The silence afterward was almost worse than the sound had been. We must have dozed off sometime before dawn, because I woke to sunlight streaming through a gap in the curtains, and Marcus snoring softly beside me. For a moment I thought I'd dreamed the whole thing. Then I saw his face, still pale even in sleep, saw the dark circles under his eyes, and knew it had been real. I got up carefully, trying not to wake him, and went to the window, pulled back the curtain just enough to peek outside. The campsite looked exactly the same. Our chairs, our fire ring, the trees. Normal, peaceful. Morning birds were singing. A squirrel ran across the clearing. But the trees... I stared at the trees, trying to figure out what was different about them. Then I realized they'd moved. Not much, maybe only a few feet. But the way they ringed our clearing had changed. Trees that had been 5 yards from the RV were now 3 yards away. The gap we'd driven through to reach our site seemed narrower. Trees don't move, I told myself. You're tired, you're scared, you're seeing things. But I knew what I was seeing. The wilderness had crept closer while we slept. Marcus woke up a few minutes later. His first words were, "We're leaving, right now." I nodded. "I'll make coffee. You get everything secured." But when he went to start the RV's engine, nothing happened. Not even a click. The battery was completely dead. "That's impossible," Marcus said, staring at the dashboard. "I just had this battery checked before we left. It was brand new." He spent the next hour trying everything. Checking connections, testing with a multimeter he'd packed, attempting to jump start from the house batteries. Nothing worked. The engine battery was dead, and the house batteries, which should have been fully charged from our solar panels, were also drained to nothing. Something drained them, Marcus finally said, sitting back on his heels in front of the open engine compartment. Overnight, something drained all our batteries completely. What could do that? He shook his head. I don't know. A short maybe, but I can't find one. This doesn't make sense. We stood there in the morning sunlight, staring at our dead RV, both of us understanding what this meant. We were stuck, miles from the nearest town, no cell service, with a vehicle that wouldn't start, and no way to call for help. We walk out, I said. We hike back to the ranger station. It's only a few miles. Marcus nodded slowly. Yeah, okay. Let's pack some water and go. We gathered supplies, water bottles, snacks, our phones, even though they were useless, a flashlight. Marcus wrote a note and left it on the RV's dashboard in case anyone came looking for us. RV won't start. Gone to get help. Back soon. We set out toward the main road around 10 in the morning, following the campground loop toward the exit. We walked for 2 hours before we realized something was wrong. The campground loop should have been maybe a mile, maximum. A simple circuit that would take us back to the entrance road, which we could then follow to the ranger station. But we kept walking, and the loop kept going, winding through the trees in a path that felt increasingly wrong. This isn't right, Marcus said, stopping to check the map for the third time. We should have reached the exit by now. I looked around. The trees were denser here, more juniper than oak, and they all seemed to lean inward, creating a canopy that blocked out much of the sky. I couldn't see any other campsites, couldn't see the main road, couldn't see anything but trees and more trees. Maybe we took a wrong turn, I said, though I didn't believe it. We'd been following the road the entire time, following the painted markers on the trees. There weren't any turns to take, Marcus said. His voice was tight with something that might have been anger or might have been fear. It's a loop. One road. How the fuck do you get lost on a loop? We kept walking. Another hour passed. Then another. The sun climbed higher, then started to descend. We drank our water, ate our snacks, and still the road wound on, the trees pressed close, and we saw nothing but wilderness. Around 4 in the afternoon, we came around a bend and saw our RV. We both stopped dead, staring at it. Our RV, sitting in our campsite, with our chairs arranged around the fire ring, and Marcus's note still visible through the windshield. No, Marcus said. No, that's not possible. We've been walking away from it for hours. But there it was. We checked the license plate, looked inside. It was definitely ours. Somehow, impossibly, after 6 hours of walking in what should have been a straight line away from this spot, we'd ended up exactly where we'd started. I felt something break inside me then. Some fundamental understanding of how the world worked, how space and distance operated. We'd walked in a straight line. We hadn't turned around. We hadn't gotten confused. The road had simply looped back. The ranger, I said. My voice sounded strange, high and thin. The ranger said to stay inside if things sounded wrong. Maybe he knows what's happening. Maybe this happens here. Radio, Marcus said suddenly. The RV has a CB radio. I never set it up, but maybe we can reach someone. We practically ran inside. The RV felt different now. Not safe, not like a sanctuary, but like a cage. The walls pressed in. The air smelled wrong, organic and thick. Marcus dug through the storage compartment until he found the CB radio we'd bought but never installed. He spent the next hour hooking it up to the house batteries, which had somehow, impossibly, partially recharged. When he finally got it working, he keyed the mic. Hello? This is Campsite 7 at Devil's Backbone. Does anyone copy? We need help. Our vehicle won't start and we're experiencing some kind of navigation issue. Hello? Static. Nothing but static. He tried different channels. called out again and again. Finally, on Channel 19, someone answered. But it wasn't the ranger's voice. It wasn't any voice I'd ever heard. It was my voice, coming through the speaker, saying my own name. Sophia. 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 Marcus dropped the mic like it had burned him. The voice continued, chanting my name through the static, growing louder and louder, until it was a scream, until it distorted the speaker and made the entire radio shake. Then it cut off. The silence was absolute. That night was worse than the first. The wind started earlier, around sunset, and it was stronger. The RV rocked violently, and I was genuinely afraid it might tip over. But worse than the wind was the chanting. My name, over and over. But now it wasn't just in the wind. It was in the walls of the RV. It was in the floor. It was in the metal frame and the plastic fixtures and the fabric of the curtains. Everything vibrated with it. Everything resonated with those syllables. Sophia, Sophia, Sophia. Marcus held me, both of us shaking, both of us crying without shame now. The terror had gone beyond pride, beyond trying to be strong. We were breaking, hour by hour, our minds struggling to cope with a reality that didn't follow any rules we understood. Around midnight, the scratching started. Something outside the RV, something with claws or nails dragging them along the aluminum siding. Long, slow scratches, moving from the front of the RV toward the back, then starting again, over and over. And mixed with the scratching, I could hear breathing, wet, rattling breathing, like something with fluid in its lungs. "Don't look," Marcus whispered. "Whatever you do, don't open the curtains." But I wanted to look. God help me. Some part of me desperately wanted to know what was out there. My hand moved toward the curtain before I even realized I was doing it. Marcus grabbed my wrist. "Sophia, no." The scratching stopped. The breathing stopped. The wind stopped. In the sudden silence, I heard footsteps on the RV's roof. Whatever was up there was heavy. Each step made the entire vehicle creak and groan. It walked from the front to the back, slowly, deliberately. Then it stopped directly above where we were huddled. Tap, tap, tap. 3 measured knocks on the roof, right over our heads. "Sophia." The voice came from above, from inside, from
My own
everywhere,
voice.
perfectly replicated. "Sophia, let me in. I'm cold. I'm scared. Please, let me in." My hands were shaking so hard I thought I might fly apart, because that was my voice, my exact voice, the one I heard on recordings, the one that always sounded slightly wrong to my own ears, but that everyone else said was exactly right. "Sophia, please. It's cold out here. It's dark. Let me in." Marcus wrapped his arms around me, buried his face in my hair. I could feel him shaking too, could feel his tears on my neck. "It's not me," I whispered. "That's not me. I know. Sophia, please. I don't want to be alone. Let me in. Let me in. Let me in." The voice rose to a scream, my scream, a sound of such anguish and terror that my heart broke hearing it, even though I knew it wasn't real. Whatever was up there was using my voice like a tool, like a key trying to unlock something inside us. The scratching started again, frantic now, all over the RV, the roof, the walls, the door. The vehicle shook with the force of it. Things fell from cabinets. A window cracked. And through it all, my voice screaming, begging, demanding to be let in. I don't know how long it lasted. Hours, maybe. Or maybe time didn't work right here anymore. Maybe minutes stretched into eternities. But eventually, finally, it stopped. The scratching ceased. The voice faded. The wind died. And in the silence that followed, I heard something else. Something worse. A child's humming. A lullaby I recognized from my own childhood. It came from inside the RV, from the small bedroom at the back. Marcus and I stared at each other in the dim light of our single battery-powered lantern. The bedroom door was closed. We hadn't closed it, but now it was closed. And on the other side, something was humming. "We need to check," Marcus whispered. "No. Sophia, if something got in, then we run. We don't open that door." But even as I said it, the door swung open, silently, revealing the dark bedroom beyond. The humming continued, sweet and innocent. I grabbed the flashlight with shaking hands and pointed it at the doorway. The bedroom was empty. The bed was still made, our bags still in the corner. Nothing there. But the humming continued, and now I could see where it was coming from. The mirror above the small dresser. In the reflection, standing behind where Marcus and I sat on the couch, was a little girl. She was maybe 7 or 8, wearing a dirty white dress, her hair long and tangled. Her face was pale, too pale, and her eyes were wrong, too dark, taking up too much space. And she was humming, staring at us in the mirror, her mouth moving with the melody. I spun around. Nothing there, just the empty RV. But when I looked back at the mirror, she was still there, still humming, now reaching out a hand toward my reflection. "Sophia," she said, her child's voice sweet and rotting at the same time. "Sophia, I found you. I've been looking everywhere. Why did you hide from me?" "I don't know you," I managed to say. The child tilted her head, that same wrong mechanical movement the deer had made. "Yes, you do. You called me. Every night you called my name. Sophia, Sophia, Sophia. And now I'm here." In the mirror, her hand touched my reflection's shoulder. I felt it on my real shoulder. A weight, a pressure. Fingers that felt like ice and rot. "Get off me," I screamed, lurching forward off the couch. The hand lifted. The child in the mirror smiled, showing too many teeth that were too sharp. Then she faded, her humming fading with her, until there was nothing in the mirror but our own terrified faces staring back. We didn't sleep that night. We couldn't. We sat back to back in the middle of the RV, the flashlight between us, watching every shadow, every reflection. And, as the night dragged on, more things happened. The cabinets opened and closed by themselves. The faucet dripped water that looked black in the flashlight beam. The clock on the microwave ran backward. And everywhere, I heard whispers of my name. Dawn came eventually. It always does. But the light didn't feel like salvation anymore. It just meant we'd survived another night. Marcus looked like he'd aged 10 years. His eyes were bloodshot, his hands trembling constantly. When he spoke, his voice cracked. "We can't stay here. We can't leave. The road loops back. You know it does. Then we go cross-country. We pick a direction and we walk until we find something. Someone. We can't stay here, Sophia. Another night like that and I can't." I understood. I felt it too. The sense that our minds were cracking, that reality itself was becoming negotiable. How many impossible things could you witness before your brain just gave up trying to make sense of the world? "Okay," I said. "We go. Now." We take water and we walk. We gathered what we could carry. 2 bottles of water each, some trail mix, the knife, the flashlight. We didn't pack carefully, didn't plan. We just grabbed things and stuffed them in a backpack and opened the RV door. The morning air hit us like a wall. It was thick, humid, wrong for October in Texas. It smelled like ozone and copper and something else, something organic I couldn't identify. The trees around our site had moved closer again. They were maybe 5 feet from the RV now, their branches reaching toward us. "Don't look at them," Marcus said. "Just walk, pick a direction, and walk." We chose east, toward where the sun was rising. We climbed over some low brush, pushed through juniper branches that grabbed at our clothes, and entered the wilderness. For the first hour, we made good progress. The terrain was rough but manageable, and the act of moving, of doing something, helped quiet the panic. We kept the sun to our right, using it as a compass point, determined not to circle back. But the forest fought us. Brush that had seemed thin from a distance became impenetrable up close. Rocky outcroppings that looked small proved to be cliffs we had to climb around. And the trees kept appearing ahead of us, no matter which direction we turned. After 3 hours, we stopped to rest and drink water. Marcus checked his phone, though we both knew there'd be no signal. Batteries at 12%, he said. It was fully charged this morning. Mine was the same, draining impossibly fast, as if something was feeding on them. We keep going, I said. We walked for another 2 hours. Then 3. The sun climbed overhead, then started to sink, and we saw nothing but trees. No roads, no trails, no signs of human presence. Just endless wilderness, pressing in from all sides. As dusk approached, we had to face the truth. We were going to have to spend the night out here, in the open, with whatever had been scratching at our RV. "We need shelter," Marcus said. His voice was dull, exhausted. "Find something. Anything." We found a small depression in the ground, ringed by rocks, that offered some protection from the wind. We didn't have sleeping bags, didn't have a tent, just the clothes on our backs and the backpack with our dwindling supplies. As darkness fell, we huddled together in our makeshift shelter, and the wind started again. "Sophia, Sophia, Sophia." But this time, it wasn't just my name. This time, I heard other things in the wind. Voices I recognized. My mother, dead 5 years. My childhood best friend, lost touch a decade ago. My college roommate who I'd stopped speaking to after a fight I couldn't even remember. All of them calling my name. All of them begging me to answer. "Don't listen," Marcus whispered, but I could hear it in his voice. He was hearing things too. His own ghosts, his own voices. The night became a fever dream. Things moved in the darkness around us, too fast to be animals, too silent to be human. The stars overhead spun in patterns that made my eyes hurt. At one point, I was convinced I saw my own body standing 20 feet away, watching us with my own eyes. Marcus kept talking, a constant stream of words, maybe to keep himself sane or maybe to keep me sane. He talked about our wedding, about vacations we'd taken, about the apartment we'd lived in before we bought our house. Normal things, safe things, but his words sounded hollow, like he was reading from a script he didn't believe in anymore. Around what must have been 3 a.m, the child appeared again. She didn't materialize or fade in. She was just suddenly there, standing at the edge of our shelter, her white dress glowing faintly in the darkness. Up close, she was worse than in the mirror. Her skin had a grayish tinge, and I could see veins underneath it, black veins that pulsed with something that wasn't blood. Her eyes reflected our flashlight beam like an animal's. "Sophia," she said, "you promised you'd play with me." "I never promised you anything," I said. My voice was surprisingly steady. "Yes, you did. Every time you came here, you promised. Every time you walked these trails, every time you breathed this air. You made yourself part of this place, and this place made me for you." "Made you?" The child smiled. "I'm what the wilderness dreams. I'm what it imagines when it thinks about little girls. And you called me here, with your name, with your voice, with your fear. I'm yours, Sophia, forever and ever." She took a step closer. Marcus moved in front of me, but the child just laughed. A sound like breaking glass. You can't protect her from me. I'm already inside her. Every time she hears her name in the wind, I get stronger. Every time she sees her reflection, I get more real. Soon I'll be real enough to touch her. And then the child's face changed, rippling like water. And suddenly it was my face looking back at me. My face as a child, my features, my expression. She even had the small scar on her chin where I'd fallen off my bike when I was 6. And then I'll be her, the child said in my adult voice. And she'll be nothing at all. She faded then, dissolving into the darkness like she'd never been there. But I could still hear her humming, that same lullaby, coming from everywhere and nowhere. We survived that night, and the next day, and the next night. I don't remember much of it. The days and nights started to blur together, a constant cycle of walking and hiding and listening to my name in the wind. We ran out of water on the second day. On the third day, Marcus tried to eat some berries and vomited for an hour. The forest itself seemed to be changing around us, or maybe we were the ones changing, losing our grip on what was real. Trees had faces if you looked at them long enough. Rocks moved when you weren't watching. The sun rose in different positions each morning, and everywhere, always, my name in the air, getting stronger, getting more insistent. Sophia, 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 like a heartbeat, like a countdown. On the fourth day, or maybe the fifth, I'd lost track, we found something that didn't belong. It was a mirror, full-length, ornate frame, just standing in a clearing in the middle of nowhere. It reflected the forest perfectly, except for one thing. In the reflection, there were people, dozens of them, standing among the trees, all watching us, all with their mouths open, all chanting, "Sophia, Sophia, Sophia." Marcus grabbed my arm. "Don't look at it. We need to go." But I couldn't stop looking, because among those figures in the mirror I saw her, the little girl. And she was smiling, and she was beckoning. "She wants me to go in," I said. I don't know why I said it. I don't know how I knew. But I did know. The mirror was a door. The child was waiting on the other side. "Sophia, no." I pulled away from Marcus and walked toward the mirror. Each step felt like wading through thick water, like reality itself was resisting. But I kept going, because I understood now. This was what the wilderness wanted, what it had been building toward since the moment we arrived. It wanted me. It had always wanted me. I reached out and touched the mirror's surface. It was warm, like skin. The reflection rippled, and the child's hand emerged from the glass, grabbing my wrist. Her grip was freezing, burning, agonizing. She pulled, and I felt myself being drawn into the mirror, into that reflected world where the chanting figures waited. Marcus screamed and grabbed me, trying to pull me back. For a moment we were suspended there, stretched between two realities. Me, half in the mirror and half out. The child pulling one way, and Marcus pulling the other. Then something gave. I fell backward, out of the mirror, Marcus falling with me. We hit the ground hard, and when I looked up, the mirror was gone. Just gone. As if it had never been there. But the child's grip had left a mark. Around my wrist, burned into the skin, was a ring of symbols. Not letters, not any alphabet I recognized. Just shapes that hurt to look at, that seemed to move when I wasn't focusing on them. "What did she do to you?" Marcus whispered. I don't know, but I did know. The child had marked me, claimed me. I was hers now, in some way I didn't fully understand. And looking at Marcus's face, seeing the horror and desperation there, I knew something else too. We weren't getting out of here. Not both of us. Maybe not either of us. That realization should have broken me. Maybe it did. But it also brought a strange kind of clarity. If we were trapped here, if this was where we were going to die, then I needed to understand why. I needed to know what this place was, what it wanted, what the child was. That night, as we huddled in another makeshift shelter, I made a decision. I'm going to talk to her, I said. The child. I'm going to call her. Sophia, no. She's coming anyway, Marcus. Every night she gets closer. Maybe if I talk to her, if I understand what she wants, we can find a way out of this. You saw what she tried to do. She tried to take you into that mirror. I know, but I have to try something. We can't just keep running. We're going to die out here if we do. Marcus was silent for a long time. Then, okay, but I'm right here. If anything happens, I know. I stood up and walked a few feet away from our shelter. The night was clear, stars brilliant overhead, and the wind was already starting to chant my name. I closed my eyes and added my own voice to it. Sophia, I said. Sophia, Sophia, I'm here. I'm calling you. Come talk to me. The wind picked up immediately. The chanting grew louder. And then, silence. She appeared in front of me without warning, without sound. The child, with my face, with those two dark eyes. You called, she said. Finally. What are you? I told you. I'm what the wilderness dreams. That's not an answer. She tilted her head. My childhood head. This place is old. Older than people. Older than names. And it's hungry. It feeds on fear, on confusion, on the dissolution of the self. You came here and brought your name with you, brought your identity, and the wilderness tasted it. And it wanted more. So you're what? A ghost? A demon? I'm a reflection. You spoke your name so many times in your life, Sophia. Millions of times. Every time you introduced yourself. Every time you signed a document. Every time you heard someone call for you. All those repetitions. All that power you gave to those syllables. The wilderness collected them. Shaped them. Made me. I understood then, in a horrible moment of clarity. Names had power here. Identity had power. And by bringing mine into this place, by existing here as Sophia for days, I'd given the wilderness enough material to create this thing. This reflection of me. What do you want? To be real. Fully real. Right now, I'm just potential. A shadow of a shadow. But if I take your place, if I become you completely, she smiled, then I get to live in the real world. As you. And what happens to me? You stay here. You become part of the wilderness. You feed it, give it strength. And maybe, someday, it'll use you to make someone else. Someone else's reflection. Someone else's dream. I won't let you. The child laughed. You don't have a choice. It's already happening. Every time you hear your name, I grow stronger. Every time you doubt yourself, I become more real. Give it a few more days, and you won't be able to tell which one of us is the original. She was right. I could feel it. Since I'd touched that mirror, since she'd marked me, I'd been feeling less solid, less real. My memories were becoming hazy, my sense of self fragmenting. Sometimes I'd forget my age, my address, the name of my best friend from high school. Little pieces of my identity crumbling away. There has to be a way to stop you. There is, but you won't do it. Tell me. The child stepped closer. Give up your name. Stop being Sophia. Become nameless. If you have no identity, selfless. I have nothing to copy, nothing to become, but that means losing everything that makes you you. All your memories, all your relationships, all your experiences. You'd be a blank slate. Empty. Is that really better than letting me win? I stared at her, at my own face, my own eyes, and I thought about what she was asking. To give up my name, to stop being Sophia, to stop being me. I need to think, I said. The child smiled. Take your time, but you're fading not too fast, Sophia. Soon there won't be enough of you left to make the choice. She disappeared. And I was alone with the wind and the stars and the chanting of my own name. I told Marcus everything the child had said. He listened in silence. his face unreadable in the darkness. "So we either let this thing steal your identity," he finally said, "or you give up your identity yourself. Those seem to be the options. What about me? If you become blank, nameless, will you even remember me?" The question broke my heart. "I don't know." "Then we find a third option. We fight this thing. How, Marcus? How do we fight something made of air and thought and fear? We don't have weapons that work on that. We don't have any weapons at all. Then we find help. We keep walking until we find someone. There is no someone." The words burst out of me, raw and desperate. "We've been walking for days and we've found nothing. No roads, no people, no way out. This forest is infinite. Or we're trapped in some kind of loop. Or we're already dead and this is hell. I don't know anymore, but I know we're not finding help." Marcus grabbed my shoulders. "Then we make it back to the RV. At least there we had walls, had shelter. We figure this out together. A sound cut him off. A sound that didn't belong. An engine. We both froze, listening. There it was again. The distant rumble of a motor getting closer. I saw lights. Headlights bouncing over rough terrain. "Someone's here," Marcus breathed. "Someone found us." We ran toward the sound, crashing through brush, not caring about the noise. The lights grew brighter, the engine louder. A vehicle, a truck it looked like, pushing through the forest toward us. "Help!" Marcus shouted. "We're here! We need help!" The truck stopped maybe 50 yards away. The engine idled. The headlights illuminated the trees, creating stark shadows. A door opened, and someone got out. It was Dale, the ranger. He stood beside his truck, backlit by the headlights, and even from a distance I could tell something was wrong with the way he stood. Too stiff, too still. "Folks," he called out, "I've been looking for you." We ran toward him, relief flooding through me. Rescue. Finally rescue. But as we got closer, I saw his face in the headlights, saw his eyes. They were too dark, too large, reflecting the light like an animal's, and stopped running. "No," he said. "No, that's not—" "I told you," Dale said, but it wasn't his voice anymore. It was multiple voices, speaking in unison. "I told you to stay inside if things got strange, but you didn't listen. You walked out into the wilderness, and the wilderness walked into you." His mouth opened too wide, and that same chanting came out. "Sophia, Sophia, Sophia." The truck's headlights flickered, and in the moments of darkness between, I saw what was really there. Not a truck, not Dale. Just shapes in the dark, writhing shapes that hurt to look at. And somewhere in the middle of them, the child with my face, smiling. "Last chance," the child said in Dale's voice. "Give me your name, or I'll take it. Choose, Sophia. Choose now." Marcus grabbed my hand. "Run," he whispered. We ran, back into the forest, away from the thing that wasn't Dale, away from the child, away from everything. Branches tore at our clothes and skin. Roots grabbed at our feet. And behind us, I heard the child laughing, heard multiple voices chanting my name, heard the wilderness itself roaring with something that might have been hunger or triumph or joy. We ran until we couldn't anymore, until our lungs burned and our legs gave out. We collapsed in a heap, gasping, bleeding, broken, and in the silence that followed, I made my decision. "Marcus," I said, "I'm going to do it. I'm going to give up my name. No, I have to. It's the only way to stop her. You'll lose everything. You won't remember us. Our life, our love. I know." Tears were streaming down my face. But at least I'll be alive. Something of me will survive. And maybe someday I'll find my way back. I didn't believe that, but I needed to say it. For him. For me. How do you even do it? Marcus asked. His voice was broken. How do you give up your name? I thought about the child's words. Give up your identity. Become nameless, selfless. But how did one actually do that? How did you stop being yourself? And then I understood. It wasn't about magic words or rituals. It was about belief. About truly, genuinely letting go of the construct we call identity. About releasing every association, every memory, every definition that tied me to the name Sophia. I closed my eyes, and I began. I let go of my childhood, of the little girl who'd skinned her chin falling off a bike, let go of teenage crushes and college finals and my first job, let go of meeting Marcus, of our wedding, of late-night conversations and Sunday mornings, let go of my parents, my friends, my favorite foods and colors and songs, let go of every like and dislike, every hope and fear, every tiny piece of personality and history that made me who I was. It hurt. God, it hurt worse than anything I'd ever experienced, like tearing out my own soul piece by piece. But I kept going. I had to. I let go of the name itself. Sophia. Such a simple sound. 3 syllables that had defined me for 34 years. I released them into the wind, watched them float away like ashes. And as I let go, I felt something else rush in to fill the void. Something vast and old and hungry. The wilderness, claiming what I'd released, taking the identity I'd given up and absorbing it, feeding on it. But I also felt the child's presence weaken, felt her grip on reality loosening. Without my identity to anchor herself to, she was becoming unstable, dissolving back into the potential she'd been formed from. No, I heard her scream, my scream, but fading. You can't. I was so close. I was almost real. But she was wrong. I could. I did. I opened my eyes. Marcus was staring at me, tears streaming down his face. Sophia, the name meant nothing to me. It was just a sound. I looked at this man. I knew he was important somehow, knew he mattered, but I couldn't remember why. Couldn't remember his name or my name or anything at all. Who? My voice sounded strange, empty. Who am I? Marcus's face crumpled. No, please. But it was done. I'd given up my name, my identity, myself, and in doing so, I'd saved what little remained of me. The forest around us began to change. The oppressive presence lifted. The trees stopped leaning inward. The air tasted normal again. And in the distance, I heard birds singing normal morning songs. The RV, Marcus said, pointing. It's right there. I looked and saw it. A large vehicle, parked in a clearing. It meant nothing to me. But Marcus took my hand and led me toward it. His hand was warm. Safe. I held on tight. The engine started on the first try. Marcus drove us out of the forest, out of Devil's Backbone wilderness, back onto paved roads that stretched toward civilization. I watched the trees pass by, watched the wilderness recede, and felt nothing. Not relief, not fear, not anything at all. I was alive, but I wasn't Sophia anymore. I wasn't anyone. That was 6 months ago. I'm writing this in the apartment Marcus brought me to after we escaped. He says it's our home, that we lived here together for years. I don't remember it, but the walls are familiar somehow, in a way I can't explain. Marcus has been patient. So patient. He tells me stories about who I used to be, about Sophia, about how we met, what she liked, what she dreamed about. Sometimes I feel something when he talks, a flicker, an echo, like a memory trying to surface, but it never quite does. The doctors say I have dissociative amnesia, trauma-induced. They think I'll recover eventually. They're wrong, of course. What happened to me wasn't medical. It was metaphysical, spiritual. I didn't forget who I was. I deleted myself. But recently, I've started to notice things. Small things. The way I prefer my coffee. The songs I hum without thinking. The way I arrange the books on the shelf. Patterns emerging. Habits forming. A new identity, coalescing out of the void I created. I'm not Sophia anymore. I'll never be Sophia again. But I'm becoming someone. Someone new. Someone without all that history and baggage and fear. Sometimes Marcus calls me by name, my old name, and catches himself, apologizes. I don't mind. Let him remember her. Let him hold on to that ghost. I'm just trying to learn how to be human again. The only thing that bothers me, the only thing that still reaches through the emptiness and creates something like fear, is the wind. When the wind blows outside our apartment, when it rattles the windows and whistles through the eaves, I hear something in it. Not words, not anymore, but a rhythm, a pattern. 3 syllables repeating. The wind hasn't forgotten my name, even if I have. And sometimes, late at night, when Marcus is asleep and I'm alone with my thoughts, or the empty space where thoughts should be, I wonder if I made the right choice. I wonder if being nobody is really better than being consumed. I wonder if the thing I saved is enough of me to matter. I don't have answers. I don't think I ever will. But I'm alive. I'm here. I'm breathing and eating and existing. And every day, I become a little more real, a little more solid, a little more myself, even if that self has no name, even if that self is built on absence rather than presence, even if that self will always hear the wind chanting something I can no longer remember but can never quite forget. Marcus says we'll never go camping again. I don't know why we would have gone in the first place, but I believe him when he says it, and I'm grateful, because even without memories, even without identity, some part of me, some deep, primal part, knows the truth. The wilderness is still hungry. The child is still out there, diminished but not destroyed. And if I ever set foot in those woods again, if I ever breathe that air and let it breathe me, I'll be giving her another chance to become real, another chance to steal whatever fragile new self I've built. So, I stay in the city, stay surrounded by concrete and glass and the noise of thousands of other lives. I avoid nature, avoid forests, avoid anywhere the wind blows too strong or too strange, and I try not to listen when it whispers something that sounds almost, but not quite, like a name I used to know.